All right, well, clearly you're all gluttons for punishment because you chose literally the least sexiest marketing tactic to listen to for 4 hours. So we'll start with that fact. The next thing we'll start with is I am really overjoyed to be here in Kansas City. This is my is this the third year, Matthew, in Kansas City? Third year, and I've been here all 3 years, which is great. But also I have a tremendous amount of friends here. Got to have dinner with some of those friends last night at their home, and then get to have dinner with a good friend of mine, Jake, who's sitting in the audience at Lazio tonight. So we've heard good things, so I can't wait to go. So this is an awesome time, I think, for me to be in KC and be able to see everyone and spend some time with you. So as Matthew mentioned, we're going to talk about email, but I do want to mention that you are, again, not tethered to this stage. So if you feel like you want to get some email, some SEO, some content customer journey, please feel free to get up and move. I will not be dismayed by someone getting up and leaving. I might be a little bit like, oh, he didn't like that slide, but we can move on from those things. As I mentioned, you've got 4 hours from me, and I only have one rule, and that's let's try and make this interactive, because if I stand up here or down here for 4 hours and just talk, this is going to be really, really heinous, although I am very, very entertaining eventually during these slides. I would love to see some interactivity amongst you all, because there are probably lessons learned amongst the group of individuals that are here that someone is struggling with you at the same table or across the room, given the fact you're probably in similar industries or have been through similar situations in the past. So please, if you want to challenge a case study or a tactic, please do so as we roll through the next 367 slides or so. As Matthew mentioned, my name is Michael Barber, and that's me. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Creative Officer at Godfrey. Godfrey is a team of 91 marketers championing the world-changing work of mid-market industrial manufacturers. So you're probably asking yourself a couple questions. Why is the Chief Creative Officer talking to you about email, and why a B2B agency? So let me just put those answers at bay. I started my career at this tiny little agency called Mighty Interactive. You won't know the name of that agency, but you will know its founder. His name is Jay Baer, probably one of the most well-respected marketers in the room. Has written 4 New York Times bestsellers, one of the most followed blogs from a marketing perspective in the world, convinceandconvert.com. And at the time, we were working on this little tiny email platform called ExactTarget. And we went on to help them build what would be their agency service model, their sort of multi-account attribution model, if you will. And then, of course, you will note that ExactTarget went on to be acquired by Salesforce for $3 billion. Also, it is the backbone of the Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So I've spent a little bit of time in this tactic over the course of about the last 16 years across many B2C and many B2B companies, and about 360-ish million emails in that 16 or so years. So I have a little bit of experience here. As Matthew mentioned, we have a bunch of slides and resources for you. First thing you should know, if you want these slides now, this is where you can get them. You just go to godfrey.com/hashtag digital summit. The hashtag is very important. It cues that little chatbot that you see in the right corner. You will be asked one question, yes or no, do you want these slides? Answer yes, you will get to a Dropbox folder. In that Dropbox folder is a plethora, if I can speak this morning, of resources. It looks like there's 4 here. I think there's 9 or 10 at this point. There's a couple of key files. There is this presentation in both Keynote, PowerPoint, and PDF. I would probably encourage you to hold yourself from downloading the Keynote or PowerPoint version, as it's well over a gig at this point, and it'll be probably very slow to download on this particular Wi-Fi. But the PDF is compressed. Beyond that, there are a couple other resources that I want to point out. There is an email audit that was done by my good friend Chris Sietsema, who did a masterclass yesterday. It's available. Great 74-question audit that you can use to audit your email strategy from top to bottom, whether you're an agency providing services to a multitude of brands or whether you're working in-house at a brand. There is also additional white papers that I find on deliverability, on best practices, on trends, and I continue to throw resources in that folder throughout the year. So you can reference that folder whenever you'd like. This URL stays active always. The other place that you can get this information is I'm at Michael J. Barber everywhere online, so please feel free to reach out if you're like, hey, you gave us this slide about this, XYZ, what was that? I would be happy to answer those questions, and you can also email me at that address, michael@godfrey.com. Other resources for you. There are workbooks for every single one of these sessions. Mine is embedded into the presentation, so it's not included on the workbook slides, but you can get all of those workbooks at that URL, digitalsummitkc.com/am. I think that URL is working. If somebody wants to confirm that for me, that would be great, but this is the one they gave me before the conference. If it isn't, I'll make sure it's adjusted and put this slide back up during one of our breaks. The second URL you should know about is our agenda and ratings and review URL. That's at digitalsummit.com/KC. That is the place where they will keep the agenda up to date. So if we have speaker challenges or someone doesn't show up or we change slots, that's where they're going to keep the agenda up to date. It's also where you provide a lot of value for us as attendees of the conference. As you go through the next 2 days, you're going to have the opportunity to rate and review all the speakers and the content that you see. We would greatly appreciate it if you take the time to do that. That's how they build the agenda each and every year, and why I have been brought back for the past 3 years is because of those ratings and reviews. So please take a moment as you're going throughout the next 2 days to utilize the little thumbs up emojis that they have available for you for each one of the sessions. Here's how the day is going to go over the course of the next sort of 3 or 4 hours until we get to 12:30. I have promised a hard stop at 12:30 because they've got to break these air walls down to set up the keynote stage for Randy. But we're going to go for about, what is that, just over an hour and 15 or so minutes through part 1. We will have a coffee break from 9:45 to 10. As Matthew mentioned, restrooms are out of these doors and to your right and your left. There will be coffee and I think light refreshments available for you during that coffee break. Then we'll do pre-con part 2 from 10 to 11:35, so a 95-minute sprint up until lunchtime. Lunch, you're going to walk out of these doors directly behind you, and there will be lunch boxes, lovely conference-style lunch boxes for you to grab, probably 3 or 4 options. Hopefully it has a good dessert cookie or something of the like. I think the cookie here is actually really, really good. I judge conference box lunches by the cookies, so I vaguely remember there's a really good one in the KC box, so hopefully that has not changed since last year. Bring your lunch back in here by 11:50, so you'll have 15 minutes to grab it, answer emails, answer text messages from your crazy boss that's still sending you work while you're at a conference, supposed to be learning, right? And then we will do a sprint up until that 12:30 moment where we will get you out so that they can break down these walls and set up for the keynote. Over the course of that 4 hours, here's what we're going to talk about. First thing is explain why email still matters, right? This would not be a marketing presentation if I didn't give you the good old Simon Sinek why, right? So giving you the typical charts and graphs and the 3 or 4 reasons why this channel still is a super impactful for a channel that we can use as marketers. We're going to go through understanding permission and list building and hygiene. We're going to talk about the metrics that impact deliverability and what the scores and metrics that matter for deliverability across each one of the major internet service providers. So Gmail, Barracuda, Yahoo, Outlook, what do those providers look for in order to score your campaign and understand if it's going to make it into the inbox, and then where it's going to make it in that inbox, into one of the tabs, into one of the spam folders, and the like. We'll talk about what those metrics look like and what you can do to help improve your campaigns to ensure they actually get into the inbox. We're going to talk through a roadmap for managing inactive subscribers. So those are people that have sort of stopped in interacting with your campaigns, whether that's an open or a click or a conversion right. How do we get them to actually do something we'd like them to do? How do we design and develop impactful email in a world where more than 50%, usually, at least at a macro level, of our email campaigns, that first open is happening within a mobile context? What does that mean for us from a design and development perspective? We're going to go through why subscribers actually open and why they don't, along with why they click and why they don't. How to personalize and segment your subscribers. We've got 27 different types of segmentation to take you through, as well as a plethora of examples around those types of segmentation. We're going to determine the right frequency for your brand and your subscribers, the good old how often and when should we be sending campaigns, and answers to those questions. How to fit email into a demand gen plan if you're doing this from an ABM or account-based marketing perspective. Determine the right email metrics for your brand. If you've been doing this for a long time, and I'm going to ask a couple of questions in a few minutes to get to know what your experience level is in just a moment. But if you've been doing this for a long time, you will know that the tried and true metrics that we have been looking at for the past, since like 1997, are the good old open, first deliverability, open, click-through rate, click to open, and our conversion rates, and then anything post-click on the back end from commerce or conversion and the like. But there is a plethora of about 60 or 70 other metrics that I would encourage you to take a look at that will allow you to get a really holistic picture of what your email marketing performance looks like. So we're going to take you through what those metrics look like and how you can build a matrix that works well for your organization or for your clients that you're serving. And then the last thing that we'll do is we'll peek into the crystal ball a little bit and look at what the future of email might look like. Does all of this look good? Is this what you came for? Good. Okay. That being said, as I mentioned before, there's 360 or so slides in this presentation. If you feel like something's not being covered or you're like, hey, I want to make sure this is going to make it, just come up to me and see me during the first break or the lunch break, and I will do my best to slot in additional slides if we can cover that, or I'll just address it directly. As always, you're more than welcome to DM me or send me an email if you've got a specific question related to your brand. Okay, before we start into why this still matters, I want to get just a read on the room. So this is the point where you all perk up and actually interact with me. So I'm just penciling that and putting a little footnote for you. Okay, I want to ask experience level. So any newbies in the room, this would be absolutely no email experience to a year of experience in this tactic. So like 20% of you, okay? Let's go sort of 1 to 5 years. Aging well, okay. Middle market, 5 to 10. Okay. Let's go on, we're getting into our older years, 10 plus to say 15. All right, and then the oldies but the goodies in the room, 15 plus. Okay, so 1 to 5 years is right where we're at, plus some oldies but goodies. Okay, I will do my best to take you through sort of a structure that'll work well across all of those experience levels. I also want to get a read on just industries that are in the room. So let's start with automotive. Retail. Any e-commerce brands? Exclusively e-commerce or both? Offline and online? Exclusively e-commerce? Okay, 1 or 2 of you. Construction, both on the commercial and residential side. Healthcare? Of course, KC, healthcare. Telecom? Okay. Let's talk service businesses, so agencies, consultancies, freelancers, architects, lawyers, okay? Nonprofit. Oh, Lord. Man, y'all need your own conference. Like, because that is a lot of you, and that is not a friendly sort of industry to be in, especially when it relates to email. Y'all are on terrible email service providers that don't do anything for you that well. All right, we'll address some of those things. There are some things in here from a nonprofit perspective. Any government-related entities? Travel and tourism? Manufacturing. What am I forgetting? Higher ed. Oh, how did I forget higher ed? Education in general. Let's just go education. Okay. Anything else? Agriculture. Oh, that's a good one to ask in the middle of America, isn't it? I'm an idiot. Financial and banking. Okay, yeah, that's a biggie. I would definitely forgot that one. Publishing. Okay. Publishing. Okay. Anything else? Okay, all right, a good swath. All right, we'll see if we can throw in some examples related to a couple of things. But let's start here. Let's start with why this conversation still matters and why you should be spending 4 hours listening to me drone on about email. It starts with 3 specific reasons. 4, but that's really a bonus one. But this is the first one. It's this idea that people love email. When I say people, I mean normal human beings, not us crazy marketers. So normal people really love this channel. And we know this for a couple of different reasons. Regardless of where we look here in the US or globally, except China and South Korea, really, and I can talk about those markets if anybody wants to talk about them, is that people love this channel. We have 6.69 billion email accounts across the globe and growing. 3 years ago when I came here, this number would have been 2.69 billion, so we're literally adding 2 billion email accounts at a clip of every year at this point. This is crazy growth. All these email accounts are sending just an exorbitant amount of email per day, 291 billion emails sent per day in between those particular accounts. And we love this channel. Like, we can't get ourselves away from our email. So Adobe, who has been looking at this trend for the last 7 years, every year in December publishes their consumer insight study, and it's just chock full of really great data that gets backed up in a ton of other studies as well. But one data point that I always look at is this one. This is the average number of hours that people are spending checking their personal email each day, okay? And there is a 17% rise comparatively between 2017 and 2018. To that, 2.5 hours, the cumulative total that normal human beings, this is 55,000 respondents across most first world countries, spending that amount of time checking just their personal email. You want to add work email to this, and this stat is even more staggering. We are spending an inordinate amount of time inside of our inbox addicted to the content that is inside of that inbox. And when we ask consumers, okay, well, what are the channels that you would like us to market to? This trend continues. They continue to tell us that if you're going to actually send me a branded communication or a branded message or a piece of advertising, please do it in my inbox. Adobe's been seeking answers to this question, which is, if we send you a piece of advertising, what is the channel you would like to receive it? Email has continually, for the past 7 years, been the self-reported #1 channel that consumers say, that is where I want you to send advertising messages to me or promotional messages to me. 50%, a full 50% of those respondents across the globe last year said that is the channel that they would like to see. And I want to call out something that you're probably paying attention to right here on the right-hand side. This is down 17% comparatively to the year before that Adobe looked at these particular questions as well. That's not a total surprise. In 2017, 2018, we saw the highest answer to this question in terms of how many people said, this is the channel I would like you to market to me into. 67%. That was the highest number we'd ever seen that particular research set come back and say, that is the particular channel I would like you to market to me in. That's not a total surprise, because you can just look at what's happening from a geopolitical perspective, right? What did we see happen between 15, 16, and 17, regardless of your political affiliation? Just like crap that's happening in social media, we all kind of have returned to our inbox in a place of calm and a place where we think we can control, because we are all very concerned with the algorithms that are in our lives from a social media perspective. So yes, we've seen a drop, but that was the highest year we'd ever seen that number, and it pales in comparison to every other channel that consumers self-select and say, that is the channel I would like you to market to me in. This isn't the only study that finds this sort of trend and this idea of what is the channel that I believe is going to be around and I believe that you should be marketing to me in. Litmus and Fluent have been asking this question as well. They had asked it with a little bit of a different context, is which is the channel that you believe will be around over the next decade? And in a sea of different channels, of different apps, of different platforms, this particular research set, which was about 2,500 respondents across the US primarily, Australia, some EU respondents in this particular survey, this was the answer that they found. So in a decade, what is the channel that you think is going to stick around? Email continues to be the answer, where consumers say that is the one that is going to be here for the long haul, followed by Facebook, and a bit of a surprise on the end of that, cable TV, although I think normal human beings are probably lumping streaming and anything into that cable TV distinction, if you will. What's also interesting is Litmus and Fluent broke this out by demographic, because I think this is a really important point. We have largely been having a conversation when we talk to email marketers about the fact that email was going to die because all the youngins, I get to say that now that I'm middle-aged or getting there, all the youngins are on Snapchat and the like and DMing in all these private messaging places, and they're not going to get an email address. Well, the research suggests entirely otherwise. When we look below the millennials, and by the way, millennials are much older than what I think is in your head at this moment. When we look at below the millennials into Gen Z and then into further younger generations, we continue to see that yes, they likely stay off email until about the age of 18, when they probably have a reason to get an email address, like, I don't know, an Amazon Prime account, or they got a job or an internship or something, real life outside of Snapchat and that required them to have an email. And then they're in, because these stats that we see from Litmus and Fluent suggest that that trend holds up throughout all the age demographics. A full 68% of those 18 to 24, this was taken 2 years ago, so these are now 20 to 26-year-olds, said that they believe email is going to be around over the next decade. And that holds true across almost every single demographic when we look. So when we ask consumers, hey, where do you want to be communicated to? What do you think is going to be around over the next decade? The stats speak for themselves. I'm not up here telling you to do one thing or the other. I'm just telling you that this is what the research suggests. The next thing that is a reason why, or the number two reason why you should continue to pay attention to email and why it still matters, has to do with the fact that not only do people still love it, but it also delivers a solid return on investment for us as organizations. Regardless of where we look, when we ask marketers, largely everywhere again except China, third world countries within Africa, and South Korea, and we can get to the distinctions of why if you're interested. But we continue to see the same trend, is that when we ask marketers, offline or online, what channel delivers the highest ROI for you as a marketer, or at least that you can attribute to, email continues to be the one that drives the highest ROI potential for their organizations. Salesforce delivered this research, and keep in mind that Salesforce is looking at largely mid-market to enterprise-sized marketers. So these are typically, organizations that are in the 200 million-ish and above revenue per year spectrum, if you will, or range, if you will. But what is your return on investment for every dollar that you spend in this channel? Salesforce found about 3 or 4 months ago, answer was $38 for every dollar spent in this channel. Not a total surprise given just how mature this channel is and the fact that we're dealing with a mid-market and enterprise level account, but it doesn't really matter because these trends continue to bear weight regardless of what type of organization we look at. This data comes from Campaign Monitor, which of course owns Emma, Deliveriv, and the Campaign Monitor platform. They asked about 2,500 marketers across the globe, what is the channel that delivers the highest ROI for you? This is mom and pop all the way through enterprise-sized organizations. You can see that 59% say that the number one return on investment for them is email. We can also look at different industries and ask this question, such as what GetResponse did about 1.5 years ago. They specifically asked, hey, for email, can you please rate it in terms of a scale on return on investment, with that light blue all the way on the right-hand side being excellent all the way through very poor. You will note that there's one consistent trend with every single industry here, and that is every single one, a vast majority of them rated it good or excellent. So regardless of industry of where we look, we continue to see this trend as well. We also see this when we get out of the 4 walls of the US. This data comes from the EU, from eConsultancy. It's about 1,600 small business all the way through enterprise-sized marketers who were asked specifically, how would you rate the following channels in terms of return on investment, and sort of all the channels that you're gonna get the chance to learn about or further your knowledge on over the next 2 days are listed here. The one that has the highest return, at least from this excellent range, is good old email, and then it falls as number 3 in the sort of good distinction behind content marketing and then SEO. So we continue to see this trend over and over again. The last one, and probably the most important, especially now, is the fact that having access to an email address is not just about a relationship with a subscriber. So when I started my career, the value of this email address was simply a relationship inside the inbox. That's all it was. Okay? It was permission to email, and then if someone opted out, it was permission to not email anymore. Okay? Then we all got these tiny little devices and added 14,000 social media networks to our life, and all of those social media networks and all of the Salesforces, IBMs, Adobes of the world all struck data sharing agreements, and they said, well, now you can take all your data and utilize it to target your customers in a variety of different places all over their customer journey based on the email address. So the value of a subscriber these days is worth well more than just a relationship in the inbox. It's the fact that we can create customized experiences on the web, in retail. We can target them well outside the inbox based on the behaviors that they're doing inside the inbox. Just one example, Facebook custom audiences, or Gmail customer match, right? Taking our first person data, email address in this case, targeting users based on what they're doing. Maybe they're not a subscriber, maybe they are. Do they open, do they click, what do they do or don't they do in a certain amount of time, and then targeting them with messaging based on that behavior or lack of behavior. And this is starting to have big impacts for organizations when we start to tie the value of that email address. Salesforce has been looking at this relationship. And what they found over the last few years is this trend is when email openers who saw an ad within a 7-day window on Facebook were 22% more likely to purchase the product that was shown in the email and in that ad that they saw. So if we want to create efficiencies and effectiveness across our channels, having an email address is not just about the relationship with that subscriber. It's also based on the behaviors that that subscriber does or does not do, and then messaging them with information or some sort of content based on that behavior well outside the inbox and having impact across those sort of multi-attribution opportunities. The other thing that's really interesting that Salesforce has found is this, and probably one of the most valuable reasons why we should be concerned about growing our subscriber list and having a healthy relationship with that subscriber, is this, is that when we have a relationship with a subscriber, we see significant revenue increases over time with that particular customer. So what Salesforce looked at, again, this is mid-market to enterprise-sized clients, is when you have access to an email address, what is the impact of that on increasing revenue opportunities over the course of at least 3 years? And you can see the positive impact of that revenue growth across those particular customers when they have access to that email address. The last one, and again, this is like the bonus one. So people love it, delivers a solid ROI. Third, it's really cool for other channels. The fourth is this, and the media loves this again. It was like for 10 years, us email marketers were sitting at our desk being like, I'm not gonna have a job in 5 years according to the media. It was like the death of email, the most reviled communication experience ever, right? And then in January, the tide sort of, well, really late last year and into sort of 2018 and into 2019, the tide has really turned around this conversation around email. For years, it was like, okay, everyone's gonna move to messaging and we're gonna see the death of this channel. Just hasn't held up. That argument just has not held up. And we've seen an entire reverse course when it comes to how the media treats this channel. And one like literally perfect example at the perfect moment was the Wall Street Journal. And if you rewind your brain to January, we were all doing this hashtag 10-year challenge thing. Well, the Wall Street Journal just teed up like the most beautiful 10-year challenge ever. So literally, this past January, I get up in the morning, drinking my coffee, and I get a DM from a friend, you've got to see this Wall Street Journal article. And it's this one. Oh, media drives me crazy. The hot new channel for reaching real people, email. And it talks about how we've all forgot about it, and it is the channel that's driving business opportunity and revenue for those businesses that are leveraging it well. And no joke, I did a search inside Wall Street Journal for email, and I backdated it because I used to have a screenshot of an article that they had posted 10 years previous, and it was this one, why email no longer rules. And it's like, what's going on here? But suffice it to say that apparently the media has finally caught up with us and knows the value of this channel, right? And because of all this, we're starting to see budgets open up because people still love it. We understand the value is not just about the inbox relationship, and it also delivers solid ROI for our organizations. You're starting to see a trend around email budgets that we haven't seen before, and that is we're spending more money and more time with this particular channel. There are a few places that have been monitoring this budget change, one of them being GetResponse. They've been asking about 2,300 of their customers across the globe, what are you doing from a change in spend perspective as it relates to this channel, or how much budget are you allocating to email? And about a year ago, these were the stats that came out from GetResponse, which said 57%, or a majority of their respondents said we are increasing that line item. The year before, this was 38% respectively, and the year before that, 23%. So a huge jump in marketers that's saying, I am spending more money in this channel. They're not the only ones that are seeing this trend. Email on Acid, which is coincidentally is a sponsor of this conference, but certainly doesn't pay for this placement. They've been looking at this relationship as well. Also on not only a spend perspective, bless you, but also on the amount of time that people are spending in this channel. And what you see is that 86% are spending more money, 70+% are spending more time. The year before, these numbers were 63 and 43 respectively, and the year before that, 50 and 38%, 38% respectively. So we continue to see increased amounts of time being spent on this channel, man hours, people hours, women hours on this channel, and also dollars that are being invested, whether it's capital resources, capital budgets, or expenditures as well. Now, where are those dollars going is often a really great question we get from customers who say, hey, if I'm gonna spend more money on this channel, what do I use it for? 4 key things which the industry is using the dollars for, the first of which is on technology and tools. If you are familiar with sort of that plateau of productivity, the good old like Forrester, or is it Gartner research that does the plateau of productivity for marketing tools? I can't remember which research house it is, but there's a plateau of productivity, and it plots all of the digital marketing tactics that are at our disposal. At the end, in the mature cycle, all the way at the end of that sort of curve is email marketing, because this is a really mature channel. Over the past decade, we've seen conglomeration of all the service providers, right, from Salesforce, IBM, and Oracle, and Adobe buying up everyone and then trying to house them all under one roof. We have seen The other sort of mid-market tools like the MailChimps of the world, Campaign Monitor, build out their platform significantly well over the past few years. If you did not hear, MailChimp announced a whole suite of new tools on Monday morning or Sunday afternoon, somewhere in that neighborhood. Again, building out their platform to be more holistic across not just only email, but all customer touch points that they can get access to. You've also seen the rise of all the third-party tools that we have at our disposal. So things like Litmus, things like Fluent, Email on Acid, OnDemand.io, all of these additional tools that we can bolt on to our email service provider that can give us really rich insights into the behaviors of our customers, who they are, what they're doing, what they're not doing, and how do we deliver personalized or timely targeted and relevant messaging to them. So you've seen budget shift into getting access to those tools. The next place is not totally surprising as well, because what did we just talk about? Solid ROI, people love it. So what's the CMO going to ask for? Growth on your list. Now, whether this is organic or paid, we can totally get into that conversation later, but there has been a push to grow your lists. And it's not just, again, about the relationship with the subscriber, it's also about everything that we can do with that email address. And that's why on every freaking site that you go to, within 15 seconds, you have a toaster unit that's like, please give me your email address, please give me your email address, please give me your email address. Have you given us your email address? The next two aren't totally surprising either as well, because what was invented like 11 years-ish ago? This is a question. No, but they actually started 11 years ago. It's a device. There we go, thank you. So the iPhone was invented 10 years ago, right? We have the iPhone X, or 11 years ago, and a bit, if you will. And that fundamentally changed where people read email. As we have shifted from a desktop and a keyboard and mouse situation to largely a mobile-first environment of where people are reading our campaigns, we have had to fundamentally rethink the context from a design perspective and development perspective, just because all of these platforms have innovated over the past few years and provided anything from allowing us to do embedded CSS and the like and create really impactful designs. It also means we've had to spend time redesigning, rethinking about how customers actually approach our emails. How do they interact with them? How do they consume them? How do they get through that content and then develop everything that's necessary to do that over the past few years as we've gotten responsive or mobile first or embedded CSS available to us to actually design emails that are even more impactful than what they were a decade ago. So you've seen a lot of budget go to those areas as well. The next question is often, are we shifting enough though? This is something we've been looking at Godfrey specifically, actually looking at the trend of, if we shift budget, what's the impact on sales that we can attribute to that particular channel, in this case, email. And one research house out of Europe, again, eConsultancy, that's been looking at this relationship, has found some really interesting trends over the past few years. And this graph is particularly important for two reasons. One, it provides you some insights into the question of, well, how much should I be spending in this particular channel? But two, it also tells us we may not be spending enough. So the red line that you see is the average proportion of sales attributed to the email marketing channel. That's the line on the top, okay? The line on the bottom, that blue line, is the average proportion of total marketing budgets that email accounts for. So a couple of things to note here. That blue line is a really good sort of beta for how much money other mid-market to enterprise-sized organizations are spending on this channel every single year. What's the percentage of their marketing budget that they're spending? So you can see 14, 14, 16, 13, 15. But the key takeaway here is that we have a huge difference between these two, meaning there's probably an opportunity to increase our spend to see if we actually see impact on the top line on revenue growth. So what we've been doing at Godfrey is experimenting with clients on actually increasing that budget line item and then seeing the impact on that particular return based on that increase. And for all of our clients except one, and we haven't figured out why, for all of our clients except one, the past 2 years have shown when we do marginal, small increases in budget in this particular channel, we see very similar marginal increases in the revenue that's attributed to this channel. So something to take away and consider. Now, as I mentioned before, what was invented 10 years ago? The iPhone. Because of that, the context of where people are reading our campaigns has vastly changed over the past 10 or so years. And this is really important because gone are the days where we're having a huge screen, keyboard and mouse situation with most of our subscribers, or we're having a blend of those relationships between a more desktop environment and mobile environment. But a couple of key things to keep in mind is that we are largely in a first-time open mobile market share, where regardless of industry, regardless of B2B or B2C, we see most first-time openings happening within a mobile device. So Litmus has been tracking this particular trend for the past 8 or 9 years. Around the 2014-2015 mark is when we saw the first 50% threshold of more mobile opens than desktop or webmail. It's hovered about the same since then. We haven't received an updated graphic or set of data from Litmus in the past 6 months, but this is what it was at the end of last year. And you can see, again, the vast majority of first-time opens are happening within a mobile device. Again, this is global, macro-level data across about 814 billion emails being sent each and every month. Through the Litmus platform or with the Litmus tracking tag on it. So it's a macro level trend, meaning that I'm not saying that this is probably what you're seeing at your organizational level or what you see with your clients. I'm simply saying, at least at a macro level, these are the trends that the industry is seeing. Most first-time opens happening within a mobile device. I'll tell you within our clients, and within other email strategists that work on the consumer side, we are seeing some really interesting trends. One of which, at least on the B2B side of things, is that largely first-time opens happen within mobile, depending upon the type or industry that that particular organization is in. If it's more old school, it tends to be completely reversed, where we have more desktop opens than mobile opens. But if it's more tech-focused, more manufacturing or engineering-focused, most of those first-time openings are happening in mobile. If they choose to convert, though, it's happening within desktop, which is a completely different trend than what's happening on the consumer side, which is whatever device that they open in is usually the device that they're going to take that conversion action in. So a couple of really interesting things happening there. Now within that client share, if you will, here are the top 10 email clients. And I put this up just for today because as of last month, Gmail overtook Apple iPhone as the #1 device type or application that people are opening email in. Really interesting to see that change, given that for literally 5 years, Apple has been, or at least the iPhone, has been the #1 device type that people were opening those particular emails in. And you can see other interesting trends here. Outlook growth is stellar, much to the dismay of us all, but I will say this. Outlook has done phenomenally well over the past 2 or 3 years to at least elevate the standards that they accept, accepting GIFs, accepting embedded CSS, across everything from Outlook 2012 and above, essentially. We also know that with all the new iterations of Outlook that are coming out after February of this year, they will basically mirror and accept most of the same types of technologies and code and language that we see across this top 10 spectrum. So we should see some normalization of what things look like across most of these devices over the next few years. But you can see Outlook up here, and then Apple iPad, of course, these being the native Mail icons on the iOS platform. Apple Mail being Mac Mail, followed by Yahoo, Google Android, Outlook.com, Samsung, and Thunderbird. What's also interesting is just to see the trending here. Samsung was at #6 as of 2018. Thunderbird was not even on this list, and we thought we were going to see the death of the Android native application last year, and it's actually growing. So we continue to see some horse trading here across what are those top 10 clients. This is important to understand just at a macro level to what devices should I at least look good in. These are where those top 10 devices are, but you can get answers to this. I'm going to give you the tools to understand how you can see what are those top 10 clients within your particular subscribers list look like. Now, as I mentioned before, we've also seen some interesting contextual changes. B2B conversions, more likely to happen on desktop. So if they open in desktop, they are more likely to convert within desktop. Totally opposite on the consumer side. If they open within mobile, they are more likely to open and convert within, if they open within mobile, they are more likely to convert in mobile. Not the case on the B2B side. They will change devices to download the white paper, register for the webinar, or take the conversion action that you're driving them towards. We also have some gender differences that are really interesting to note. Men and women are equally likely to convert on desktop when they open on desktop, but if they open in a mobile platform, smartphone or tablet, things get a little bit different. Women, more likely to convert on tablet if they're mobile. So if they're mobile and they open in tablet, they're more likely to convert there. Men, smartphone. So if they open in mobile and they're on their smartphone, they're more likely to convert on that smartphone. interesting just implications for us as we're thinking about our personas and what we have to design for from a contextual perspective inside of the inbox. As you're thinking about which particular personas apply to your business, these are just some top level trends that we're seeing in the industry. What's also been intriguing is we're spending more time, even as we've made this contextual change over the past 4 years, this sort of device change from desktop into a mobile-first environment, we're actually spending more time with campaigns, with email, than less. You see that reflected in the Adobe Insight study. You see that reflected here from Chad White, or the former research director at Litmus, Chad White, who's now at Oracle, doing the same thing, has been looking at this particular trend for the past 6 or 7 years. A statistically relevant increase in time is being spent even as we have transitioned largely to a mobile-first open perspective. So we are spending more time in our inboxes and not less. The other key trend is we're actually more engaged on a per campaign level. So the other thing that Chad and the team have been looking at is how much time do we spend on a per campaign basis, if you will. And there are two really interesting things to take away from this particular set of numbers. One of them is that this is what the industry deems as sort of the slices, if you will, of engagement. So at the bottom you have glance read, that's less than 2 seconds. In the middle, a skim read, 2 to 8 seconds. And at the top, a read or a super engaged subscriber is greater than 8 seconds. So we've always asked ourselves, what's sort of the average amount of time that people are spending on a per campaign basis? And Litmus and the industry has essentially said 8 seconds is about the break. And what they found is 50% of us are spending about 8 seconds and 50% are spending 8 seconds or less on each campaign. And we tend to be spending more time, not less, over the past few years, even as that screen size has changed. Now, this is all device types, mobile, desktop, and webmail. When we slice just the mobile segment, it gets even more, we see even more of a change over the past few years. So we're seeing a full 10% rise in individuals that are spending more than 8 seconds on a per campaign basis. Meaning even though the screen size has changed, even though we've gone to smaller screens, and then slightly bigger, and now back to smaller, and vice versa, and foldable screens, even as all of these changes have happened, we are spending more time on our campaigns reading them, real human beings, than less. So, interesting opportunity to think about there, because the working hypothesis was, as screen size shrinks, we will spend more time, because we are on the go, and we're busy, and we're bombarded by hundreds of notifications from any number of places every single day. But even though all of that has happened, we continue to spend more time on each campaign than less. Also, one other thing to take away here is this idea of 8 seconds, or an 8-second rule, if you will. We've all been in those meetings where our beautiful sort of 700 pixel long email, ready to go, designed, developed, good to go, beautiful, suddenly becomes 4,000 pixels and groupthink sets in and we've got 40,000 articles that we've got to include on that newsletter. This is a really good stat and at least graphic to show that team, is you've got about 8 seconds. That's about the threshold. 50% of your audience is going to spend 8 seconds or less, and 50% of your audience is going to spend 8 seconds or more. You've got to be hitting that 8-second mark, okay? The idea that your brand also can have a relationship like the Skimm or the New York Times or ESPN Daily's newsletter is just kind of pie in the sky. So unless you have built that long-term, long-form relationship with a subscriber, you've got about 8 seconds. You've got an 8-second rule that you're trying to get content across inside of the inbox. I'm going to back up before I get to this one now. Because of all these contextual changes, we are reading email in really strange places and at really odd times of day. This is probably one of my favorite graphics to show you every single year. And Adobe in that same consumer insight study has been asking, hey, what are you doing when you're in your inbox? What are the other activities? Because we're all multitasking at any given moment. Even if we're bad at it, we're still doing it, okay? Now every year Adobe asks this as an open-ended question with some recommendations of answers based on years previous. But all of those 50,000-ish respondents are able to essentially self-report what are they doing in the inbox. And this is what we hear. And these insights are just fascinating. So when people are in their inbox, they are very, very distracted, or at least doing two things at once, if you will. And it starts with a second screen viewing experience, right? So just like social media and watching Netflix, like we are Netflixing and inboxing essentially, right? We are watching something and doing work inside of our inbox at the same time. And then after that, we get to a good percentage of people while in bed, right? The first thing we do in the morning is not like roll over and kiss our loved one, our partner, pet the child or the dog and say, I love you. No. The first thing we do is we roll over when we grab our phone, and then we look at the 14,000 emails that our boss has sent between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. and wonder how exactly they're able to do that during those hours. And then we do the same thing, right? We go to bed and we're addicted to our inbox right before we go to sleep, right? Triage the inbox so I don't have to deal with it when I get into the office in the morning. Then things get really fun. While on vacation, a good 46% of us literally cannot go to the beach and have a beer and not be in our inbox. And then things get really fun, like creepy fun. So a good percentage of us, 43%, while in the toilet, we are in our inbox. And I realized like everybody just got super uncomfortable because I said bathroom and toilet. So let me just try and just elevate the room a little bit. Listen, I have not been in a women's restroom in a long, long time, but I can tell you that if you don't believe this stat, like literally, go into a men's restroom for giggles, okay? Because literally you can take the urinals, slice them in half, and 40% of the dudes will be doing something on their phone. I don't know if they're in their inbox, but they're doing something. What it is, I don't really care. I'm just doing my business. But I'm not the only one that's sort of doing that sort of multitasking thing inside of my inbox while you're in the bathroom as well. Then we get things like while on the phone, right? While walking during a meal with others, we physically can't have a conversation with each other and actually not be in our inbox. While commuting to and from work, right? We're on the subway, we're on the metro, we're on a bus. While in a face-to-face conversation, we all know these people that are at work doing this, right? That are like, yep, I'm listening to you. Not really listening. The next set of people I really, really hate while working out. If you can work out and do your email at the same time, I don't like you because you're too talented for me. Just putting that out there. While driving, probably worse than texting and driving is email and driving. And then while at a formal ceremony, like you physically can't go to Sunday church or bat mitzvah, bar mitzvah, quinceañera, birthday, wedding, whatever it is, and just be there, right? A good percent of us are Ari Golding every single one of the events that we go to. And anybody that laughed at that joke, I will love you forever. It's an Entourage reference for all of you youngins. Go look at the series on HBO Go. It's amazing. Okay, the key takeaways are this from this slide, is that there is no right answer to the age-old question, when is the right time to send email? I cannot answer that question for you. It is on a subscriber by subscriber basis. That is the answer. Jane Doe, 55, or close to retirement, 2 kids in college, she reads email at very different times than John Doe, who's 32, professional in his career, whatever you want to describe that particular persona is, right? There is no right answer to this question. It also means that timely, targeted, and relevant is all at the subscriber level, okay? We have to segment. We have to be able to personalize because people are on the go, they're doing multiple things, and there is no right time when we can be actually interrupting that flow of conversation. This is why almost every single one of your email service providers have put a little feature on that says deliver when it is the right time for that subscriber. Because gone are the days where the sort of token Tuesday and Thursday at 9 a.m. was the right answer to that particular question. There is no right answer. It's all based on the relationship that you've built with that subscriber and when that subscriber is actually opening their campaigns. So summing it up, why spend the next sort of 3 or so hours at this point learning how to make this better? And I'm not a big fan of text on slides, but if there was one quote that I think sums up the why factor here for email, it comes from the team at Adobe. After that consumer insight study this year, it was just beautifully summed up at the end of that research in the following words. Email is still the #1 most effective one-to-one communication channel for marketers, even though there is more noise in all of our inboxes and despite the growth in mobile apps and social media. and text, but power rests in being close to the data to help determine the right email message and when to deliver it. So Adobe, who arguably sort of trades horses for them, the platform that sends either the first, second, or third email on a daily basis across millions, if perhaps billions of email addresses, and across trillions of interactions with customers that are not just digital, but also offline interactions that they're creating through their platforms, says this is still the number one most effective one-to-one communication experience that marketers have at their disposal. So people love it, ROI, assist other channels, it's just awesome. But we got some problems. I don't know if you've looked in your inbox in the last couple of days, but we got some doozies that we got to really address. So we're going to go through that, have a little come to Jesus, if you will, about what all the mistakes that we're doing on a daily basis inside the inbox with our subscribers. But it really starts here, is that you're all sending email to people that's actually not legal, okay? 78% of the email that is being sent, the promotional email is not CAN-SPAM GDPR CASL compliant. Period, end of story, okay? You have not appropriately permissioned the relationship with a subscriber. And that is a ton of email. That is like 94 billion messages per day. It's staggering how much spam we are sending every single day. You wonder why all Gmail, Hotmail, Outlook, Yahoo have created tabs and focused in other inboxes and really, really smart spam folders? Because we've been sending baloney to people that have actually not opted in yet with us. The other thing is it actually costs money. You're actually physically harming the environment every time we send a non-opted in email campaign. $20 billion is what we cost the global economy every single year because of spam. A Harvard and Stanford researcher got together and found this was the downline impact for all the infrastructure, technology, and people it takes to combat all that spam. So we're actually doing ourselves and the economy a disservice by wasting these dollars. And if you literally want to talk about the time of year that is particularly important, just rewind your brain, or actually most of you, especially around the consumer side of the business, you're starting to plan for holiday, okay? We all know the holidays, right? Okay? October, November, December, okay? This is a really unique time for email marketing. It's like the sweet spot for us, okay? Because I don't know what happens in our planning meetings relates to holiday, but every single year I feel like the conversation has to go like this. Well, people are shopping, so we should send them more email. And people go, okay, I'm on board, let's do this. Let's send 25,000 campaigns within the next 2 days, okay? And it's not just one brand, it's a ton of brands that are doing this. Just as an example, I got 9 from one brand on Cyber Monday. One brand. I've never bought a product from this brand. I literally only subscribed because I wanted to see their campaigns. 9 emails on one day. That's crazy. But they're not the only ones that are doing this, okay? Return Path, which touches about 1 billion emails every single month, or 2 billion every single month, I should say, looked at the average number of campaigns that are being sent as we get to holiday, okay? It doubles, essentially. Most brands double the amount of campaigns that they're sending in that October to November period. The big problem here is this. All that time that you spent concepting, creating, designing, developing, legal review, CMO review, decline, fail, go back and start over, that whole process, 80% of it was ignored. 80% of the email that's sent between October and November is ignored within a following trailing 90-day window. So have fun with that stat. Now, it ain't pretty either. So listen, I'm gonna get to the good stuff like how we make this better, but if you're one of the brands in here, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna say that right now. This is a learning experience. It's a workshop, okay? But it is also not very pretty when we actually do get delivered, such as this. This literally came to my inbox at 7:19 this morning. First name, brackets, last name, brackets. I don't know if those are forward slashes. Thank you. Hi, first name. I'm like, why? Or this is the subject line, or where do I click? This subject line has like 400 characters in it. Now listen, I'm gonna tell you in a few slides that subject line length doesn't matter, but if it is 400 characters and it's just meandering, it really doesn't matter at all. What's the point that you're trying to get across here? Then if I open your campaign, you got like 14 calls to action in the first 100 pixels. What do you want this person to do, is the question. Or this is the you just used half the screen. This is from our good friends at Hallmark. We all love a good Hallmark moment, right? Okay? This is happening every single day. So take your, for the sake of this conversation, take your marketer hat off, put your real human being hat on, okay? And go through this email content with me, okay? Hallmark, all right, I'm in. I'll look at this. Watch Have a Little Faith, okay, all right. What is this blue line of text? Oh, that's a Hallmark logo. View from mobile, why would I do that? I'm in mobile. View from web, what is a web page? Is this a Facebook logo? I'm not gonna add you to my email address. I can't even read this. Oh, Lawrence Fishburne. That's literally what a normal human being goes through. Meanwhile, they have no idea why you sent them this campaign, right? Get to the actual point. This is the no you can unsubscribe example. This is in the footer of a real campaign from a brand in Denmark. It says, you are not seeing things, by the way. This is want to change how you receive emails, you can blank or blank. So that says unsubscribe or change your preferences. There's only one problem. The hex color on the URL is FFF on a background of FFF, otherwise known as white on white. Email crime, okay? All right. Or this, who writes this, a robot? Who is writing this stuff? Okay, I'm the nerd that goes to your footer because that's what nerds do, and I read your footer content, okay? And this is a recent email that I got from a theater in New York after I bought tickets for a show. Just bear with me if you cannot see these words, because it's it's like a light blue on a blue first. Let's start there. Oh man, accessibility issues up the wazoo. Anyone even remotely blind cannot read this at all, but let's get to the greater point here. You have received this courtesy email from us today regarding your user experience on the site, but have not been entered into any marketing databases. Please note there's no commas here, so I'm reading this how this is written, okay? Please accept our apologies and disregard this email if you've already made your purchase. Our system can take up to 30 minutes to update, and we may not have registered your purchase within our email system if a different email was used to complete the transaction. If you no longer wish to receive operational emails from us, please click here. Minus the fact that it's missing 26 commas. It also sounds like a robot wrote this, okay? So please get a little bit more human inside of the inbox. Or this. Nailed it. Happy holidays. Someone forgot to close some code. Or this. If you're doing columns that require people to zoom, stop. Just stop. That's all I got for you. Okay. Sharing, or in this case, testing is caring. 2 examples. We all know America's favorite burger, Red Robin. Look at the subject line. Global, hashtag global.firstname, hashtag 50% off just for you. That went out to 4.4 million people. Hey there, comma, percentage member underscore name underscore first, percentage. You're gonna send a salutation. Probably should work on that. I love this one, Casey Scala on Twitter. First look at the example below. Hi, open bracket, customer first name, close different bracket. Check out what's going on Maury's. So Casey responds back. Hi, open bracket, Maury's Auto, close different bracket. My name is Casey. Also, I got rid of my Mercedes 3 years ago, thanks. Oh man, this one's always a doozy. How many of these do you have in your inbox? Hi, I just showed you one. Hi, open bracket, first name, close bracket. We are connected on LinkedIn. Great. Tell me something I don't know. Alt test. That's a good salutation. Or this. This one is a recent one for me. Got this a couple months ago. Michael, happy 5-year anniversary. Haven't had this car for 6 months. Also bought a car from the same dealership, same brand. Y'all know this. Why am I getting an anniversary email for my old car? Or this, good old folks at Xfinity. You change your password, 3 emails to tell you that you changed your password. Why isn't it just 1? Emails everywhere we don't care. This is a common preferences center where you've literally opted in everyone to every campaign, regardless if they actually said, I want to be opted in to every campaign. This is Barry's Bootcamp, which is like a group fitness class. Okay, I got an email from their Swedish location in Ammangatset. I probably butchered that city, but I don't speak Swedish, didn't understand the email, so I clicked on the subscription preferences link, opted into every single one of their locations. Why? But this happens all the time, right? You're in a meeting, you're like, oh, we're launching a new product, new customer, new SKU, new service, new SKU, new product. Let's just opt everyone into it. Did they actually tell you that they wanted to opt in? Do you have a behavioral or database reason to opt them into that campaign? Never been to the Swedish location, probably not a good reason to add me to that campaign. Or this, Tommy John, which is a men's underwear and undershirt brand, now has women's clothing. I am a religious purchaser of Tommy John's things, but I've never bought anything from the women's line. It's like I buy good gifts for my sister and my mom, but like a camisole, I don't know about that. But I still get emails from them. Did you forget your camisoles? Nope. Because I don't wear them. Or this is the good old error messaging. This was a recent unsubscribe that I tried to do. And then just did this. Like, nope. Yep, that's all it did. Can't unsubscribe. When was the last time you clicked your unsubscriber preferences link and checked to make sure it worked? You wonder why people are instantly unsubscribing and marking as spam? There it is, right there. Lord, help me with your preferences centers, okay? All of you just use out-of-the-box ones. You don't customize it. You don't put it on brand. You don't give it a voice. And then someone takes the step, the actual step. Someone actually, like a customer did something you wanted them to do. If they unsubscribe, you want them to click the subscription preferences center or your unsubscribe button, not the instant unsubscribe and mark as spam. So they click it and they get this. You serve up this. This list is called C2ME_LAX_clients. I have no context for what I'm opted into. Why would I continue to be opted into it? Or this one crushes me because this is a very, very well-known platform. This is their standard subscription preferences center. Look at the options. So keep in mind that I have actively chosen to go to your subscription preferences center, and these are the options that you're giving your subscriber, okay? The first one says, unsubscribe me from all my current lists. And in tiny 6-point font, next to a radio button that I cannot press because it's so small, is the words new list. Ooh, warm and fuzzy. The second one is unsubscribe me from all my current lists, and you're like, I'm on multiple lists? But the third one is the kicker. The third one is really, really great. The third one, if you can't read it, says, never email me again. Literally, the one that takes the least amount of cognitive load, the one that everyone understands, even your, sixth cousin Joe, right? Who doesn't understand anything about what you do related to your marketing job, can understand never email me again. So the one that you don't want people to select is the one that you've served up in the easiest fashion possible. Or this is the out of the blue WTF example. Let me just back up. This is from your friends at the TSA PreCheck. So TSA PreCheck, I've been in it for like 5 or 6 years at this point. And over the summer, I get this email. TSA PreCheck, get, use, go. 3 easy steps to get your expedited TSA PreCheck. And I'm like, I've been doing PreCheck for 5 years. Also, why does the federal government not know that I have PreCheck already? My email address is associated with that PreCheck account. You don't know this? Why are you sending me this? Or this is a great one, okay. If you're gonna personalize, please don't tell me you're personalizing, okay? Every single week, Ticketmaster, which controls 72% of the live events in the world, sends an email that says, Michael, your personalized event lineup. And then they just serve up some gloriousness. San Diego Gay Men's Chorus, The Book of Mormon, Billy Elliot the Musical, The Little Mermaid, Idina Menzel, Diana Krall, Il Divo. It's like, Ticketmaster knows me so well. Great, just don't tell me that you know me so well, okay? Or this, nothingness. Boxes 2 is coming. Or this is the subject line fail. That subject line, this is an oldie but a goodie. Marketing lists. Warm and fuzzy. Or this one. August newsletter to customer. Or this one. Like literally, I try to not find these examples for you, and then they just come to my inbox. So this one says, my baby died after being left in a hot car. Okay. The pre-header, from crispy bacon to tender roast, here are 15 best pork recipes. Ooh, man. Didn't look at that before it went out. Or this, a lot of us are testing text-based campaigns, but if you're gonna do text-based campaigns, the URL should not feel like I'm going to West Africa to give away my life savings, like this one does. I'm gonna skip over this example because it's the same one as this. This is the good old, oh no, I'm not, lying. This one was great. Hello again, Michael, comma. I missed your reply to my email a couple of weeks ago. You did? There's this really cool feature called search. Type in your email address. I did not reply. You've never sent me email. You're just straight up lying in the inbox. Why? If your salespeople are doing that, please just like cut off the SMTP routes. Like literally go to your webmaster and be like, I don't want salespeople to be able to send email. Period, end of story. Just stop it. Or this is when you put interns in charge of outbound sales. Look at the middle paragraph here. I spotted you on LinkedIn, open bracket, or wherever else. Just put in a relevant site. You sent the template. I've done this before, so I'm allowed to make fun of this. It happens. Again, no one is going to work hard for your content, okay? Pinch and zoom. There's literally 2 things that people do on their phone to pinch and zoom. Maps, photos. Email is like not on the top 1 million things that people are going to zoom on their phone. Do not make people work hard for your content, because can you read this? Even in the back, this is hard to read. And it's on like a 40-foot monitor. Or this. I mean, you wonder why people are on their phones like suddenly like this. It's not because they're blind. It's because you're sending them content that looks like this, right? I'm going to skip this example. This is you really want to unsubscribe, really. This is a double opt-out confirmation. This is also illegal now, at least in Europe. This is from Zara, fast fashion retailer, okay? So you've clicked the unsubscribe preferences or unsubscribe, and they send you another email to confirm your unsubscribe. Man. Or this, I challenge you to find the opt-out link. Have fun. It's there. Just wait for it. You just have to break that skin between your thumb and finger. You know. There it is. Okay. All right. Where are the e-commerce people in the room? Raise your hands high. They're all like, oh God. How many of you are doing cart abandonment emails? Yes? Cart abandonment? Okay. Cart abandonment, if you don't know, put Amazon Prime users, hands up. You ever put something in the cart, looked at something for like 90 seconds, start getting emails? That's cart abandonment, okay? So this is what I would not like you to do with your cart abandonment emails, is this. Look at the subject line. We saw you looking. 17 minutes later, we know you've been thinking about it. Oh man, shoot me now. Okay. Or this is, I mean, literally. Congrats, you survived the Boston Marathon. This was the year after the bombing. Ooh, bad day in the Adidas office that day. Do you actually care? This is from JetBlue. I love these customer feedback examples that we send an email. Like, email is a great resource for driving customer feedback and word of mouth reviews. So JetBlue sends this out, any airline you fly, they've got your email address, they send you a feedback survey. So, you click on this. Well, first of all, I should say, what do we do when someone emails us? We can reply, right? We've been doing that for 26 years at this point. So Tom Goodwin, who if you don't follow on Twitter, you definitely should, replies back to JetBlue and is like, hey, I'll glad you give you feedback. And he does this very purposely because he knows that they're not listening at all, because literally bounce back. That reply goes nowhere, just dead. And we don't tell users like, hey, this is not monitored. Or we actually should be monitoring it, because feedback loop scores are actually scored by the ISPs these days. It's actually how you increase your engagement score with the ISPs, and we'll get to that in a second. Now, I've taken you pretty low. I want to end on a high note because this is the greatest example ever. This is also an example for all you B2B marketers that are dealing with sales teams or CEOs that tell you to do crazy stuff in the inbox that you shouldn't be doing. So Ann Hanley, who's a dear friend, if you ever get the chance to hear Ann speak, phenomenal, go. Posted this on Facebook last year, and she says, a real email campaign that I received first thing this morning. The subject line is, are you okay, Ann? And then my response, I'm sure the person was a nice guy, but I was just in a mood. Within a 24-hour period, 732 reactions on Facebook, 51 shares, 204 comments. This was the email that Anne received. And if you can't read this in the back, I'm going to read it for you. Hi, Anne. I wanted to drop by your inbox one last time because I see a tremendous opportunity for marketing profs and us working together. I'm going to assume that you're not dead or kidnapped. Are you in prison? If I don't hear back, then I'll assume you're like me and have a million different things going on. I'll plan on reconnecting in a couple months unless you let me know you're ready to evaluate sooner. If you're still in jail, don't worry. I'll post bail for you. Winky face. P.S. If indeed it still makes sense to connect, just let me know a couple of times at work and I'll give you a call. So Anne responds back. Dear name redacted. This email is to inform you that Anne Hanley, inmate number 874992, is currently being held in the Tri-County Women's Correctional Facility. She's being held without bail, pending trial for choking a salesperson for sending unsolicited mail. She is suspected of using her bare hands, although the weapon of choice might have been a string of emails that she wove together and used as a rope about the victim's neck. She can't personally respond, as her one phone call was to the Reverend Father Bright Kofi of Nigeria, who promised her $50 million in exchange for assistance with a bank transfer for inheritance due to her. Thank you, kind lady. Thank you for your understanding. Sincerely, Mr. Anthony Whale, Deputy Director and Tuesday afternoon Arts and Crafts Leader, Tri-County Women's Correctional Facility. But the key takeaway is that we're really not trying that hard, okay? In a tactic that people spend a lot of time, engage time, a lot of time, they continue to say that this is where I want to receive branded communications. It continues to deliver solid ROI, and the relationship is about well more than just the subscriber's email address. It's also about what we can do with that email address. We are just not trying hard enough, and the data backs it up. When we ask marketers, are you doing anything besides sending one campaign to all of your subscribers, 50% of us say no. A full 50% of the room is just doing a single batch and blast campaign to all of their subscribers. And because of that, this is what's happened. We have psychologically affected what this channel feels like to people. Don Norman, who's arguably the father of user experience and this idea of interaction design, has talked about this fact any number of times in the talks and TED Talks he's given over the years. But this quote stands out really, really well, is that email is the office memo turned cancerous, extended to everyday home and life, because we are connected 24/7, 365, and we are sending a lot of crap in that particular channel. So how do we get better? We're going to start answering that question after the break. You have a break until the top of the hour right at 10 o'clock, correct? Yes, 10 o'clock? My watch is on East Coast time because that's where I live, so I'm just making sure I did the conversion. So 10 o'clock, bathrooms to your right or to your left. There's also water in the back if you need it. For those of you that have joined us maybe a little bit late, just wanted to give you a heads up. This is where you get all of the slides and the resources. If you go to godfrey.com/digital summit, again, the hashtag is really important. What you'll see here is this webpage. It'll pop out a chatbot. On that chatbot window, you'll answer a question. Are you at Michael's session? You just hit yes. It'll give you access to a Dropbox folder. Inside of that Dropbox folder is a plethora of files, all resources around email, this file being one of them in both Keynote, PowerPoint, and the PDF version. Just a quick note, in case anybody didn't hear this before, the Keynote and the PowerPoint version are over a gig at this point, so they are huge files. So I would not recommend you download them on the Wi-Fi here, but the PDF is about 200 megs, so it should do relatively okay on this particular Wi-Fi. Okay, we are going to get started. So meanwhile, while all that nonsense was happening inside of the inbox, and meanwhile I am talking to you, I'm actually going to go back and there we go. Thank you so much for doing that. Meanwhile, the tech around emails continues to evolve. First thing that we should know, the good old spam folder is getting a lot more smart, okay? So Gmail introduced the idea of a spam folder, a smart spam folder, if you will, some 10, 11 years ago at this point. Of course, Outlook had a junk mail folder for many years, but it was not smart. It was literally a junk folder of junk. Like, you couldn't really do anything to teach it how to learn what an actual spam mail was. But Gmail said, we're going to change that. We're going to put some machine learning behind this, even in the early days, that you could self-report that spam. They've now done a couple of things really interestingly and well. And I use Gmail as the example throughout here because they're the largest public ISP. They also have the highest number of emails read on their platform on any given day. And also, everyone copies them. So anything that Gmail does eventually hits Outlook, right? And eventually hits any one of the other providers. So we'll get into that in just a second. They added the instant unsubscribe and mark as spam, right? So because we all buried our footer links in tiny gray font, right? You know, the Pantone PMS CG10. It's like the lightest gray font you can have on a white background. For the designers in the room, they said, okay, well, if you guys are going to do that, we're going to give people a 175 by 225 pixel button that not only can unsubscribe, but also if they really don't like you, mark you as spam as well. So report and create a hit on your reputation as an email marketer too. Now, I mentioned before this idea of the spam folder getting smarter. This is what has happened, or I should say more smart over the years. So this is basically how an email gets to the inbox. We send it. It hits what's called an inbound mail server, and it has done since the advent of the internet. When email marketing was first started, the first sort of permission access or authentication standards that we had to get into the inbox were all around authentication standards, and we're going to talk about what those are in a few slides. That's that server right at step 2. Essentially, as long as you were an authenticated sender, you had a pass. If you failed, you just got blocked and weren't even delivered. And then each of the ISPs determines where they're going to put you. So inbox, junk, quarantine, block, or delete. Over the past few years, we have layered in this step 4, okay, which is this reputational data. Think of this as the rewards of having actively engaged subscribers versus those that aren't. What the ISPs are doing is saying, how engaged are your subscribers? Are they opening? Are they clicking? Or what they aren't doing? They then take that engagement data and determine if they're going to deliver that particular email to each individual subscriber based on that reputational data. So they're building up and scoring and giving every single one of the emails that you send an engagement score to determine where they're going to put you in the inbox and why. They do pull back the curtain a little bit, and I'm going to show you how to look at what those performance and engagement metrics that they look at are over the next few slides. Now, Gmail has also done some really interesting things that almost every other ISP has followed. The first of which is they've started to say, hey, there is a problem with this email, right? Phishing, spoofing attempts inside of the inbox, rather than just giving you like a little red line. These days they're giving you a big old red box. And if you're not authenticated or you're sending through a known spam list, this is what happens to your campaign when you have those particular experiences. The other thing that Gmail is doing is starting to add on some of the other things that we've seen over the past few years from different inboxes. One of which, of course, is the proactive unsubscribe. So Gmail is essentially saying, hey, you're not looking at this campaign. Do you want to unsubscribe? Their window is 30 days, by the way, 30 days, okay? So if they're not seeing an engaged subscriber, they're going to start asking your subscriber, do you really care about this particular campaign? Which begs the question, are we doing a good job at re-engagement campaigns and making sure that we're cleaning our lists as effectively as possible when Gmail is asking these questions? The other thing that they're doing is top picks. Now, this was beta tested about 6 or 7 months ago in Brazil and Portugal, hence the Portuguese that you see up here. But top picks are just that. These are emails that Gmail has seen the subscriber often opened or click on a regular basis. And then they're actually elevating them into the inbox to say, hey, these are the ones that you typically care about. We should put you here. Again, this is why timely, targeted, relevant, and an engaged subscriber matter, because all of the ISPs are starting to reward those brands that deliver and ensure that their subscriber is opening as often as possible. They're also rolling out an entirely new promotions tab that debuted in December 5th or 6th of last year. You've probably started to see this roll out if you haven't taken a look at the promotions tab. Gmail is providing a much more sort of rich experience within that promotions tab. Things like adding in a logo to the actual from area, the expiration date for deals and discounts that may be happening within your campaign, that dealer discount badge, so what is the code that people can actually use so people can take action without even opening your campaign. And then a featured image is also what they're including within that promotions tab too. If you're wondering how you get your emails to look like this, there's a really great tool called the Promotions Tab Builder from Litmus. Just Google Litmus Promotions Tab Builder. You put in this information right here, it will give you, bless you, it will give you the code that you need to embed into the header of your email to get all of that rich content into the promotions tab. You can also create it so that every single time you're setting up a template, you have those form fields to fill in and indicate. But this is the easiest way to build that content on the top of the code within your email campaign so that when someone looks within the promotions tab, they're seeing all of this rich content from your campaign. The other thing that Gmail's doing is bringing a web-like experience to the inbox, and they're doing this with the AMP platform. If you're not familiar with AMP, it stands for Accelerated Mobile Pages. I don't know if you've experienced this in Gmail yet. It's now on Yahoo and Outlook, so it's cross-platform compatible as of 6 months ago. But you have probably experienced this within a Google search result. If you've looked up something recently on Google and you see the cards that just stack right underneath the search result, and when you click on one of those cards, it instantly loads, right? You don't have to wait for any of the content to load. That is the AMP platform. Again, it stands for Accelerated Mobile Pages. It's a specific framework as well as a specific hosting environment for the content on search results that at least is within the Google platform, but they're also rolling this out to the inbox as well. And again, it's not just on Gmail anymore. This is supported by Outlook 15 and above across all devices, as well as Yahoo across all devices. And this is what it looks like. This is essentially a rich, very fast microsite experience inside of the inbox. So this is the Pinterest weekly tab email. This is loading on a standard LTE connection. You do not have to leave the inbox to interact with the campaign contents. You can do all of your activities inside that email, pin it to your board, interact with that content without leaving Gmail entirely. Why? Because Gmail wants to keep you inside of the inbox, right? There's a method to this madness of creating these types of experiences. They also know people don't want to wait for your content to load. They don't want to click on your button and then wait for a terrible experience on the other side of that button. This is another example from Doodle. Doodle is a platform that allows you to compare calendars and opening times that you can have meetings. You used to have to click on the button and go to their website to fill it in. Now you do it right within the email itself. So this is leveraging the AMP platform. Instantaneously loading. It is essentially having a microsite or web-like experience directly inside of Gmail. A year or two ago, almost every email strategist said, yeah, this isn't gonna hold, we don't really know where this is gonna go, are people really gonna like it? Then they rolled it out on Outlook and Yahoo. The conversations are turning. I think you'll start to see a lot more AMP-based emails come out over the next 12 to 18 months. If you want any more information on AMP and how to code your emails for AMP, because it's 100% out of beta at this point, it was launched a year and a half ago across 100 brands, but now anyone can do it. You're just gonna go to the Gmail Insights blog, literally Google Gmail blog. It provides you with all the documentation that you need to actually deliver an AMP-based email inside of the inbox. Okay, now just like everyone follows Gmail, Outlook is no different. Over the past year or so, Outlook has fundamentally redesigned their user experience when it comes to the Outlook app. And this is not only on mobile, it's also on desktop. So as of February of this year, this is the new Outlook user experience, or UI if you will, or user interface I should say, on both mobile as well as desktop and webmail. It's a completely unified experience. And the other thing that Outlook has done is started to evolve across what those sort of tab structures look like. So very similar to what Gmail has done with promotions, primary promotions, social focused, all those things. Gmail is now doing, or Outlook I should say, is now doing focused or other. Focused being emails that you probably care about, other being things that you probably don't care about, and continuing to learn and deliver those campaigns that you mark as focused or other to that inbox and gets to know that subscriber to know where they should be delivering those sorts of campaigns. You'll also note that as of 3 weeks ago, everything Outlook 2015 and above supports GIF and almost all embedded CSS styles, CSS3 at least, across those platforms. So we now have GIF support in most Outlook platforms that are out on the marketplace. We also have most common embedded CSS styles available on the marketplace for Outlook. So a lot of innovation around Outlook over the past year or so that's gotten them to a very good place. 2 years ago, I would have literally just waxed and waned on about how terrible Outlook is, but it is getting better. Every single month, they seem to be coming out with improvements on the platform, or at least adopting standards that we see across Gmail and some of the other major ISPs too. Not only have the actual inboxes themselves evolve, we've also seen devices evolve as well. So we have wearables. We think about, based on the Apple results and Samsung results, about 60 to 80 million watches and gear-based devices on wrists around the world. A couple things to note as it relates to the email experience inside of all of these is they only actually support the text-based version of your email campaign. They do not render HTML. HTML takes processing power takes battery life. They're trying to save battery life. So for years, we've just neglected the text-based campaign of our HTML emails, please take a second to clean them up, because anybody that is on a wearable device is going to see all that sort of chicken scratch that the auto generator from your HTML email creates in the text-based email as well. The native apps have continued to improve too, at least for the end user experience. Why look at the native apps? Because you saw number 2 and number 4 on that list of top 10 are Apple iPad and Apple iPhone Mail and iPad Mail respectively. As of iOS 10, they do things like this. 2 really key things that are interesting for us as email marketers. 1, they're doing the proactive unsubscribe, right? So they have the banner at the top. And they do that at the user by user and campaign by campaign basis. So you can actually instantly unsubscribe with essentially 2 taps of your finger. One item to note, we are not tracking these proactive unsubscribe calls to action. So within any of your ESPs right now, we don't do a really good job, at least of showing you where those unsubscribes are coming from. That's something I definitely think you're going to start to see, is where is the unsubscribe source coming from? Is it iOS? Is it that banner at the top right? Just so that we can understand where and why people are unsubscribing. The other thing that's been particularly important, given the fact that you're going to hear this stat 1 million times, I'm sorry, 80% of the content that people are going to consume online for the next 10 years will be video, or by 2020, something crazy like that. There is a really, really good case to be made for native video support inside of email, and we don't have it yet, except on the iOS platform. So within iPad and iPhone, you can deliver native HTML5 based video that will load on the click inside of the device without having to click onto a microsite or landing page or YouTube or Wistia Video or wherever you're hosting that video content, right? So you can now do HTML5 based video inside of anything for iOS 10 or above across iPhone and iPad respectively. I would imagine, based on some beta tests that I've seen in recent weeks, that you're going to see this come to Gmail. It will be leveraging YouTube, because Google wants to leverage YouTube views from anywhere and drive YouTube views up. Couple that with the ANT platform and a 5G network, and you're going to start to see native video support right within email campaigns. That'll become a reality probably within this year, if not next. Yes?
If people are skimming emails for 8 seconds, how long do you have their attention for a video, an email?
Oh, I don't even know the answer to that question. I mean, we can have a conversation about what is the right length of video content, but there's no research and nothing that suggests any answers to that question yet. Yeah? I mean, if you're trying to drive video views, yeah, then the copy or text is probably irrelevant if that's the ask, right? Yes, because we are a very visually based society, right? Where our eyes are going to go right to the most important thing we think is on the page. And rich media is often the thing that our eyes go to first. Wistia, which I'm going to show you an example of, does a really, really good job of understanding how to drive video views from email, leveraging GIFs within their campaigns. And they A/B test a play button overlay, no play button overlay, and then animations that are coming from the right and left-hand side. So I'm going to show you that example, but that's a really interesting way to test to understand what type of interaction around video drives the most clicks, or at least gets someone to click on that type of content. Any other questions around video? Now, for all of that technical change, right? Folderings, tabs, proactive unsubscribe, top picks, all of these tech changes that we've seen, people are still reading. If you have a conversation with someone inside your organization that starts with this, well, no one reads this stuff because it's buried in tabs anymore, that is an unfounded assumption, okay? It's complete hogwash. Research suggests that across every demographic, we are checking these tabs, other promotions and the like. At least 60% of us and above are checking those at least once per day. There's a great study that came out of Bluecore, which is this team out of the EU, that looked at this very question. How many people are checking their promotions tab still? This was about 2.5 years after the promotions tab came out, so this is about 1.5 years old at this point, but a full 60% and above of people are checking that promotions tab. And while you take a photo of this, just note that they broke this data down by demographic, which is on this slide, and across every generation, The vast majority of age groups are checking this on a daily basis, and some of those age groups are checking their promotions tab 2 to 3 times per day, okay? This is also why you've seen Gmail do things like top picks and the like, because when someone clicks over, they want them to have the most impactful experience they possibly can. I buy a lot of Taylor Stitch shirts and a lot of Bonobo stuff. Literally every single time, bless you, my top picks in Gmail are Taylor Stitch and Bonobos, right? Because that's the stuff that I buy most often from their email campaigns. Now, meanwhile, while the tech has been changing and trying to keep us out of the inbox, the laws are also changing as well. And this started with our neighbors to the north. Before I go in depth into this, how many of you are touching global-based email campaigns? A few of you. Okay, I'm just going to hit this really quickly because that's like 5% of you. But there are 3 areas of the world that we need to care about when it comes to privacy and email, the first of which is Canada. So beginning in 2014, Canada rolled out CASL. It's the Canadian Anti-Spam Legislation Laws, okay? Basically their version of our CAN-SPAM on steroids, okay? It did a couple of things. It defined that commercial messaging meant not only just address email or email addresses, but all digital communications. So this applies to everything from chatbots, messaging, display advertising, search, everything that is a digital medium. It also defined specifically for email, what implied versus express consent means. In the US, we have CAN-SPAM, okay? If you don't know, CAN-SPAM allows you to send one email to every single email address in the US one time without permission. It is the second email that requires permission. That is CAN-SPAM. CASL said, not the case. You either have implied consent, which allows you to continue to send marketing messages, or you must get express consent before you send your first campaign, okay? Again, not a big fan of text on slides, but the lawyers tell me that I need to at least include this as a baseline for you to understand the difference here. Implied consent is 3 things, and it means exactly what it is. You imply consent to receive marketing messages, right? Without giving permission, active permission. 3 things that stipulate implied consent. You've done business with that particular organization in the last 24 months, meaning you've bought a product, a service, or an offering. Just like every good government, they wrote themselves out of the law. So the second stipulation is all political organizations and charities that you've done some interaction with are completely implied consent. And the third is a professional message between 2 people, meaning I went to a trade show, we had a conversation, or we're business, we know we do business together. That implies consent that you can send me marketing messages. If you don't fall into one of those 3 buckets, you cannot email anyone until you get express consent. And express consent in Canada is giving away exactly the information that you do with CAN-SPAM. So what are you sending, when are you sending it, physical mailing address, and an unticked opt-in box, okay? You cannot pre-check the opt-in box in Canada, okay? Now, the next area of the world where we've started to see some progressive legislation around privacy in the inbox is Europe. Any B2B marketer in the room? We'll go back to May of last year when we were all freaking out about GDPR. If you're not familiar with GDPR, it stands for General Data Protection Regulations. It was the EU's goal to unify all the privacy laws around the inbox and data over the past few years. Really cool EU. You did a great job on providing a unified set. Now all the countries are off doing their own things, by the way, so I don't know what's happening with this law. I can't really tell you if it's ever going to be actually enforced. Europe's got this whole thing called Brexit going on. Attention is elsewhere, but I imagine as soon as that's done, we'll start legislating brands and different organizations just like they have done Google and Facebook for now. I'm just going to tell you what this is. I don't know what they're actually doing with it and how it's going to be enforced because they've broken it apart country by country at this point. But back in May, GDPR came out and they said essentially any European citizen hitting your digital property, so this meant regardless if they are coming from the EU to a US site or an EU citizen in a different country, needs to be GDPR compliant. There were 4 things around GDPR compliance. You must have a data protection officer or a DPO. This is someone that's named in your privacy and terms and conditions that says that's the person that's in charge of privacy regulations inside of your organization. Second thing is you must be compliant. We're going to get to compliance in a second. The third thing is you must disclose data breaches in a certain amount of time. You can't wait a week. You have to do it within 72 hours unless there is national security interests that are causing you to have to delay that, and you have to work with the European Union to determine what that timing is. And the last one was around this idea of personal data. and what is and what isn't personal data. So here was what they did around this idea of consent for the inbox, okay? It requires 6 key things. The first of which is it has to be unbundled, meaning that you must separate the opt-in, the terms and conditions that you do for marketing-related messages from your standard privacy policy. It must be completely separate and noted within that policy. The second thing, just like Castle, it has to have an active opt-in. You cannot pre-check any boxes for a net new subscriber. In other words, you cannot just add them to a list without asking for their permission, okay? Number 3, it must be granular. In other words, if you've got multiple different newsletters or multiple different things that you'd like them to opt into, you must give them the options to do that. Number 4 is they must be informed. You have to give enough information for them to make a buying decision or a conversion decision in this regard. No imbalance of power, meaning that I as an individual have just as much right to my data as when I give it to you, okay? So just because I give you my data doesn't mean you own it forever. The last one was this right to withdraw, or what we call the right to forget. You must give people the ability to be completely wiped clean from your marketing-related databases. So that was GDPR, and everyone freaked out because they thought the European Union was going to start to prosecute this up the wazoo because Canada has actually prosecuted Castle already. But we haven't seen any active legislation come out of Europe, any active lawsuits come out of Europe as it relates to GDPR, yet. I think that they will probably be doing something over the next few years because Canada doesn't, and they want to make sure they're protecting the privacy of their citizens. And because if this matters, Castle has already earned $10 million in litigation fees for the government of Canada. So I would imagine they're going to go after brands that are not actively taking care of their GDPR compliance as they should do. The last one to note, and this is a doozy because it's local, good old California. California passed last year the CCPA, or the California Consumer Privacy Act, okay? This is a specific privacy protocol for anybody that's based in California. Why is this important? 30 million people, 5th largest economy in the world, okay? Now, comparatively from CCPA and GDPR, there are a couple key things that are very different that you should probably know about. In Europe, the definition of personal information is the individual. In California, it can be the whole household. So, data, you have to be able to house it under the household level. Don't ask me how we're going to technically do that. I don't know yet. This is legislators not knowing what they're doing, okay? When Zuckerberg went up to Capitol Hill and you heard him ask dumbass questions, exact same situation happening here, okay? Access and data portability. You must disclose and deliver free of charge any information that you have on that users within 45 days of the request, okay? So you have to be able to have some mechanism that says, hey, I would like to know what data you have on me and disclose that within 45 days of that request. Very similar to the right to forget in GDPR and in Europe is the easy to withdraw. This is like basically, if you want it, you got it. If I'm out, right? Okay. Good old right to forget, if you will. Now, this disclosure statement is really interesting because this is one area where I do think you're going to see this adopted not only in California, but largely on the good old blue states, and then work them way inward. And I would have told you we will probably never see anything like this at the national level if it wasn't for the Facebook Cambridge Analytica debacle that just happened, right? But you're hearing even more conservative legislators talk about privacy specifically around that issue. But this disclosures area is, I think, an area where we have a lot of common ground. And it was interesting to see California actually put this into law because this is an area I think we will probably see at a national level. The idea of disclosures is that you must be able to understand and give away your understanding of where all that consumer data is coming from. So is it first party? Is it third party? What are the categories of that data? What do you know about that customer? Did you buy it? Did you rent it? Do you own it? All of those answers must be able to be disclosed to the consumer level so they understand what is the data that you have at hand as on that individual from an organization. So interesting changes that are happening from a privacy level. This is going into effect sometime next year. They haven't exactly slated a date. I don't know how it's going to be enforced. Don't ask me. I leave that up to the lawyers to figure it out on all the platforms. But suffice it to say, these are things we're going to have to compete with and understand. At least you've got a top-level view on what all of these sort of privacy legislation and progressive legislation that's happening across different areas. Yeah?
I'm at an agency here in town, and one of my
Okay.
And they had lobby day in Washington within the last couple of months, and that was the primary goal.
Yeah.
They were talking to senators and representatives from Missouri, was talking about the fact that from an advertising agency perspective, we would love to have one policy if they're going to do it rather than 50 different policies. So how much traction they could get, but that's who they were talking to senators and representatives about that specifically.
Yeah.
That's a huge push from an advertising industry perspective.
Yeah. And
Not surprising.
yeah, and if we don't solve this at a legislative level, the platforms are going to solve it for us. So you've already seen, so at Google I/O 2 weeks ago, and with Google I/O and was it Safari that came out with some updates? At Google I/O, when the new Chrome comes out in 6 or so months, they are eliminating cross-domain tracking. Okay. So you will not be able to understand when someone goes across different domains and comes back to your site. There's also an entire additional layer of privacy that Apple is introducing into Safari that will basically not allow your analytics platform to understand who that user is on your site. So if all the lawyers that are up in Washington don't figure out how to create a common standards, the platforms are going to do it for us, because at the end of the day, they make money off of this, and they want to either be able to own it, right, and put it in a silo, which is exactly what Google is doing. It's exactly what Facebook is doing with them moving more to more private conversations, and then monetize it beyond that. But yeah, these are just going to be conversations we're going to be having for years to come. But it will be years before we have a common federal standard around privacy, because nobody's going to get on the same page here, largely because they don't understand what they're doing. Sorry. Anybody's mom, dad, significant other is a lawyer or legislator? Sorry, they just don't get it yet. Teach them. Okay, so the key takeaway is this. Us marketers, bad, email, good. Okay, how do we make this better? So let's get to the good stuff of how do we make this better. First, the value of list building is huge. How do we grow our lists is something that's a hot topic of conversation. I'm going to give you 27 different ways that you can think about how to grow your list from both an offline and online perspective. First, have an email page. I don't know why more brands don't have this, okay? Just have a page where you have the opportunity to sign up for any and all of your email campaigns. Make it visual, make it engaging, right? If you're looking for an example of who does this well, it's publishers. The publishers in the room get this because you understand the idea of owned data and eyeballs, okay? But brands are like, I don't have a page where people can actually opt in that is beautiful and engaging and includes all of the newsletters or campaigns that you're sending. Next, your preferences page. Do something better with them, okay? Your preferences page isn't only just unsubscribe, it also allows people to subscribe to other newsletters. So not only can they unsubscribe, but also what other newsletters do you have at your disposal? Maybe they don't want to be in this particular one, but they're like, oh, you do content on this. Washington Post has 9. New York Times has 73 different subscription options on their page. They also get an 80% open rate and a 60% click-through rate on a yearly average. The idea of more options elicits people not being engaged is baloney. Get over it. The data suggests otherwise. Shareable sign-up pages, right? Where are pages that you can give to your sales team, that you can have on your social media or content creation team, where someone can sign up for this specific campaign, right? What is the short URL that goes with that? Inline sign-up units, so through your content, whether it's blog post content, whether it's web page content, as people are scrolling through that particular piece of content, having a sign-up form that they can get more information or sign up for a campaign. Any number of great examples here from the New Yorker, New York Times on the left, the infatuation on the right as you're scrolling through that information. Again, from the Capital Journal here, right? This is a right-hand rail or inline unit here. This was an example I just saw on HubSpot's website. So you're scrolling through HubSpot's content, and you get this sort of inline pop-up or toaster unit. This is based on an amount of time that you're spending on the site. Not 2.5 seconds, like 90 seconds in, so you're more of an engaged individual at that point. A chatbot or lead gen unit, if you're doing anything from a chatbot perspective or live chat on your website, having the conversation you can insert basically dynamic conversations that says, hey, would you like to sign up for this or this based on that conversation? We do this really simply on our website at Godfrey, right? So as you get to know that user, asking that individual if they would like to sign up for your email campaigns. Bottom of the story boxes or bottom of the content boxes, right? As they finish their reading experience, offering the opportunity to either get more or sign up for that particular campaign. The nav unit, you're starting to see multiple different brands just because of the value of the subscriber. Put it in one of the most trafficked areas of your site inside of that navigation unit. 2 examples here for you. Bon Appetit on the left-hand side. Even in their mobile nav, responsive, right? So they drop underneath 320 pixels. They have a small sign up at the bottom of that responsive nav. On the right-hand side, this is from brides.com, including it as a text-based link in that navigation. You hit subscribe, a little box drops down, and you can subscribe to their main newsletter. The footer unit, just like the nav unit, as people get all the way down to the bottom, having some sort of component or module that you can add to different page templates within your site. Just including that right on the bottom as people get through that content. You're going to have people that use the top nav, you're going to have people that use the bottom, giving yourself the real estate to have multiple areas where people can sign up. And a couple other examples of footer units here as well. Homepage unit, you're starting to see this too, right? Dedicating a sort of full width module as people are scrolling through. It's a good, really interesting way to create a natural break between different types of content. So maybe you're breaking between, you've got your core product set up and then you get into sort of like your blog post content, right? Creating a natural break of that content from a design perspective. You're seeing the Infatuation do this as well. They actually do a full or almost a 3/4 page roll down as someone spends about 38 seconds on their particular website. And they show you exactly what that newsletter is going to look like as well. The other thing is you can self-select and provide some data based on location here too. So they're asking for email address and they're also getting a piece of data as a part of the sign up too. Another example here from the Penny Hoarder. I love this example because this is some social proof here. You also saw the social proof from HubSpot. When you say join X number of people, customers, right, that are reading our email campaign, 67% of the time. The original that did this well was Chubbies.com, the short shorts people. They always had a great footer module that said join like 35,000 men who love short shirts that open their email 67 times per day or something like that. So essentially guilting people into doing something you would like them to do. In this case, you're joining 8.3 million active penny hoarders is the social proof statement that they're using as a part of this sign up. Some other examples for you. You can do the homepage unit like Quartz does right here. One thing to keep in mind is these don't always need to be visual. From an accessibility perspective, you can also use text-based signups, right? So for those individuals that have disabilities that are using applications to read the content on your websites, they can't look through images unless you're adding appropriate alt tags or readability information to it. So having a text-based link can be a really effective way to provide accessibility to those subscription opportunities within your site. Within your apps yourself, whether it's a homepage or some sort of particular tab, right, including the ability to sign up or subscribe. Post-email sign up page, so when someone signs up, what are the other options that you give them? Maybe there are additional campaigns, maybe it's a forward to a friend or recommend this newsletter, if you will. Remnant ad inventory, for anybody in the building that is a publisher or that is actually monetizing any sort of content piece that they have at their disposal, if you don't have impressions from ads, actually backfilling those impressions with an opt-in ad essentially, so subscribing to your particular newsletter. Author bios, you're seeing a lot of different, if you will, organizations create thought leaders inside of their organizations, whether it's the CEO, maybe it's someone that's like a developer on your team or an engineer or a well-known individual that speaks on behalf of your organization. Maybe someone just wants to see the articles or posts or the information from that author, having the ability to subscribe to information that's just coming from that particular individual. Social icon units, sitting it right next to the social icons, right? When people want to follow you or friend you, if you will, including that as an option right at the top or at the bottom, wherever you're putting those social icon units. Right rail units, left rail units, wherever your sort of site structure works right, putting different opportunities to have those sign up forms across different places. You're seeing top units too. This is from Refinery29, right underneath their nav, having an area where you can sign up for their particular newsletter. The good old pop-up or toasters, these are the most annoying things on the web right now, but they actually do work. I would just recommend you get smart at them. So give it some time, or maybe it's a number of pages that people go through your site before you pop this up. But the first interaction with a new person on your site should not be, hey, sign up for my email address. It's just annoying. Some other examples of pop-ups and toasters. Other examples that are here as well, these can happen within mobile too. You're seeing a few particular publishers actually pop it at the top of right where the bottom of the footer is, but actually overlaying it above the content. Paywall units, if you're doing anything that's sort of like pay to access additional content, allow people to give their email address to get access to a little bit more. New York Times does this really well, as well do a couple other publishers too. Sign up posts, this is a funny one. BuzzFeed generates, the stat is crazy, 20% of their net new signups on new newsletters that they launch come from a blog post about the newsletter that they're just about to launch. So doing essentially sign-up posts or content that's about the ability to sign up. In this case, it's for the Hot Dudes newsletter, but BuzzFeed has 67 different newsletters. Doing actually promotional content around net new campaigns. Apple News promo units, if you're syndicating any content into the Apple News platform, which they're investing heavily into, you can actually have opportunities for people to sign up, right? This is a way to get from a very much rented space to some owned information on individuals that could be subscribing. Pocket promo units, these are things that are at the bottom, but also they tend to be small and text-based. Sweepstakes, another good way to generate opt-ins, whether you agree with them or not, but doing some sort of co-branded sweepstakes to generate opt-ins is really effective. I'll only say this, the best way to take advantage of sweepstakes opt-ins is to get them into your welcome campaigns as fast as possible. Build the relationship post-sign-up as quickly as possible. Do not wait a week, a month, till the sweepstakes is done to start emailing them, because they will forget that they signed up for that newsletter via that sweepstakes. Lead gen units, very, very, very specific example that comes from a B2B areas. So lead gen units will happen within content themselves, whether it's on a blog post within the homepage or certain different types of pages that you may have on your site. Inside the email promos, you see these all the time, the forward to a friend. We typically see between 0.05% and 1% conversions on here. But that's still a percentage of conversion that's available to you, so don't neglect it for the sake of it being just tiny. Facebook promos, they allow you to do a full sign up within their Facebook page. So, and actually messaging that within the header image or the cover image of your Facebook page. And they allow you to sign up with one click. So it'll actually pass the data, the email address that people log in with Facebook with, directly into your CRM if you have it integrated correctly. Based on logged in state, I would love to see more brands take advantage of this. When you have a known relationship with a user, do not require them to give you your email address again. Just give them easy ways to sign up, as frictionless an experience as possible. So if they're logged in, which they've probably used an email address to log in, then your sign up form should change. Here's a great example. Logged in user sees sign up for Science Times, and it's just a simple button to sign up. Logged out user actually sees their email address and CAPTCHA here. So, right, so that we know that they're logged in. We don't need to ask them for their email address if they're already logged in to our site. Another good example here, logged in user, here's the Checkpoint newsletter, sign me up. Logged out newsletter, actually give my email address and sign up. Here are a couple other final ideas. Create a landing page where users can sign up for a new newsletter that you're launching, very similar to what BuzzFeed does. Targeted posts on Facebook and Instagram. You can easily take your known subscribers, create lookalike audiences that look like those individuals, up to 20 million people in reach, and target those across the entire Facebook ecosystem. Touts on YouTube or any one of your embedded videos. If you're using YouTube or a third-party platform like Wistia, all of them allow you within the Studio Manager to say, at moment 37, I would like you to stop the video and ask for an email address or whatever you want to ask for, and then start the video again. Promotion for niche newsletters inside of main newsletters. One great way to drive traction with smaller newsletters, maybe it's the authors, maybe it's thought leaders inside your organization, or it's smaller targeted newsletters to specific types of verticals that you're doing business in, is promoting them right within your main newsletter themselves. For the e-commerce leaders in the room, during a purchase of a consumer product or ticket or an event, right, as you take them through that purchase process, getting them to sign up. A feedback or question submission page, getting feedback and then asking for people if they would like to sign up, and then in the archive of a newsletter. You will very often see people share really interesting content they see in the newsletter, utilizing the archive link of the email or that view as web page link, if you will, and we don't put an ability for someone to sign up. Let's say someone with 1 million Twitter followers is like, this is a great email. I don't know what you put on the email. and shares it on their Twitter profile, how are you going to generate net new subscribers from that when the archive page does not have a sign up link? So consider your archive place as a point to also generate signups as well. Next place where we can make email great for this year and beyond is authentication. And this is this idea that you prove who you are. Only 82% of the email, promotional email, is getting actually to the inbox globally, okay? Just because you're seeing a 90% deliverability rate does not mean it's actually getting there. It just means it got through the first server, through the inbound mail server. We have to make sure it gets all the way to the inbox. So how do we do that? We do that in a couple of interesting ways. We get this by doing these authentication protocols that are sitting right here at step 3, these pass or fail authentication protocols. Now, there are 3 key ones that you must, at a minimum, have, okay? SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. For any sized brand, or excuse me, I should say, for any sized list, at a minimum, you should have an SPF and a DKIM record. I'm going to define what these are and show you how to do them, so don't get hung up on the abbreviations yet. The DMARC policy is specifically for high volume senders. About anybody who's sending it depends on the ISP, the internet service provider you're sending to, but it's about 50,000 or more subscribers per email campaign that you're sending, or any volume greater than that. Okay, so what are these first 2? SPF stands for Sender Policy Framework. This is the gold standard of email authentication. It provides your email service provider with a framework for every email that you use. In other words, this says, hey, I am the brand who I am utilizing your email service provider. So this says, hey, I'm Coca-Cola to MailChimp or to Marketo or to Adobe. It says you are the brand who you say you are. This is why when you get an email from a company that you do business with regularly that hits your spam folder, it's often not that actual company. It's a spoof attempt or a phishing attempt, if you will. It doesn't have a relevant SPF record attached to that particular brand. This is a pure spam play, okay? So Sender Policy Framework is the first one, SPF record at a minimum. Number 2 is your Domain Keys Identified Mail, or DKIM record. This is the email service provider's way of checking that you actually own the domain name server where you sit all the records that point where everything in your digital ecosystem goes, where your www goes, where your mail goes, all of those things. This is that ESP's, your email service provider's way of making sure that you own that domain, okay? So SPF and DKIM record at a minimum. I'm going to pause here and say that there are some email service providers that do not allow you to have an SPF and a DKIM record. They are Constant Contact and Vertical Response. And that's all I'm going to say about those 2 platforms, okay? Let me just tell you why that's important to know. If you do not have an SPF and DKIM record that's validated against your domain, you are at the mercy of every brand that's leveraging the same server to send their email campaigns. And what they're delivering and who they're delivering it to, and if they have spam lists in their particular subscriber base, or if they've scraped lists or bought lists, you are potentially at the mercy of all of the brands that are sitting on the server that's sending on the same server that you're sending it from, okay? So I would very much encourage you, if you do not know what these things are, to find out if your email service provider allows you to do this, and then implement these changes. Now, continuing on. The last one is only for high volume senders, your DMARC policy. It requires an FPS record and a DKIM record, and you have to warm up IP addresses to get a standard DMARC policy. But anybody that's doing high volume sending knows this protocol, so I'm not going to get in depth into it. Again, at a minimum, SPF and DKIM. What this does, it allows Gmail, Hotmail, Barracuda, Comcast, whatever ISP to know that you are the brand who you say you are. You are Coca-Cola. You are the Overland Park Convention Center. You are the Sheraton. That's how it gets those authentication records in place. Now, SPF, DMARC, and DKIM are all text-based query strings, or text-based content, excuse me, not query strings. They're all text-based series of characters that you add to your DNS profile, okay? You get them from your email service provider. If that's Marketo, if that's MailChimp, if that is Emma, if that's Acton, that's where you go to get these records, okay? They are usually in the admin section of your site, your email service provider, your logged in email service provider. This is a particular example from MailChimp. This is just showing you where you get these records from, but it's basically the same on any given platform in terms of it's usually buried in the system or admin settings of your account. When you get in there, in the case of MailChimp, you're going into the settings area and you will see these verified domains. You get in there, and here are your DKIM, and it'll say view setup instructions. There is the DKIM record for your account, and there's the SPF record. You copy those text strings, you go to your webmaster, and you say, we need to put these on the domain that we're sending email from, and now you have a verified, authenticated domain. This now means that your domain that you deliver off is what's counting for those authentication records, and not your ESP's shared authentication records or brand who knows what on that particular platform. You begin to build authentication and engagement records on your domain, not somebody else's rented space. Any questions on DKIM, DMARC, or SPF? Okay. Now, where you can find out if you're actually doing this well or not is two places. The first of which I'm going to show you is Postmaster Tools. If you're not familiar with Postmaster Tools, it's very much like the webmaster tools of Gmail. So if you've been doing SEO at all in your lifetime, you know Webmaster Tools is essentially Google's way of telling you things that they knows about you as from a search perspective. This is exactly the same from a Gmail perspective. So all you have to do is create a free account on Postmaster Tools. This is just at postmaster.google.com. You verify your domain. You can do this through Google Analytics or through adding a tag or whatnot within your campaign. Once you're verified, then you get access to 120 days of data, all data that Gmail cares about from an engagement perspective. So you get things like user-reported spam. So how many unknown email addresses do you have on your list? You get things like IP reputation. This is only for high-volume senders. You'll also get domain reputation. Is it high, medium, or low? Anything medium and below is a problem. You can also see your authenticated traffic here. These are your DKIM, SPF, and DMARC success or failures. Encrypted traffic. Gmail cares that you encrypt all the things that you send to a user through an SSL or a TLS based certificate. And you can see that for 120 days of rolling history. This is the data that Gmail is utilizing to determine how engaged your subscribers are, at least at a basis, at a minimum. Are you making sure that all of your authentication records and security protocols are in place so that you can begin to make it into the inbox? It's also a really good place to understand if you're having deliverability issues within Gmail, what may be causing those things. Because if you see Gmail deliverability drop, the first place that you're going to go is to Postmaster Tools to understand maybe something happened. You'll recall in this, we should see this in just a second, there's a really good example of seeing a deliverability area here when this loads again. If we go to, when it pulls up the encryption, here we go. We'll get there under those authentication. You will see the actual graph drop. So on SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, you will see these red lines drop. It's coming up right there. That is a day when you probably had a Gmail deliverability issue, when your SPF or DKIM record didn't verify on that particular send. So this can help you answer questions as to why are we seeing drops in deliverability on different platforms. The place to do this for all your @Outlook addresses is the Microsoft Smart Network Data Service, or SNDS. You get basically the same data that you would get from Gmail, but for all @Outlook email addresses. Another place that you can go to understand what you're doing right or maybe wrong from an authentication protocol and understand if you're on a blacklist or a block list is at a website called senderscore.org. This is a screenshot of senderscore.org. What senderscore.org allows you to do is you create an account. It's 100% free. You tell that particular account, this is the domain that I send emails from. It's either an IP address or it's a domain that you're sending email from. It will tell you two pieces of key information. The first of which is your sender score. They rate you from a 0 to 100. Anything below a 92, I would have some concerns about. They also tell you what particular block or blacklist you are on. If you are on a list called Spam House or Spam House, like house, H-O-U-Z, those are the two worst lists you can be on. If you're on those lists, there is a good chance you are not delivering anything. Those are known lists that all of the major platforms utilize to determine if you've bought email addresses from. Any other lists that are on there, you'd probably have to investigate to defend what is the impact of being on that list for your specific company. But Spam House and Spam House are the two that are really the big ones that you need to be concerned about. Why does this matter? Because the ISPs are starting to reward this and show consumers, people, that you're actually authenticated. So Gmail is actually showing, hey, this email is okay. They're showing a lock symbol, and they're showing that it actually is free and clear. Example of when it isn't is this big old thing where it actually is saying, hey, the security on this email is probably compromised. They're also starting to put these emails right into the spam folder so people don't actually see them. Next thing to understand why this matters is because all of the major ISPs have now agreed on a standard called the BIMI standards. This is the Brand Indicators for Message Identification Standards, because we needed another acronym in our business. These are the message identification standards that Yahoo, Hotmail, Outlook, Comcast, and Gmail, and the like have all gotten behind and said, at a minimum, this is what you need to get into the inbox. It is SPF, it is DKIM, it is DMARC. It also has to do with a couple other minor things, but they're going to start to reward people who monitor and make sure that they've got the authentication protocols for those BIMI standards. But it's everything that I've just told you. So this is the standards they're going to pick up. I don't know if they're going to be adding things to the years, but it sounds like the industry's finally gotten behind one common set of standards that will ensure that you have truly authenticated domains. Any questions on authentication? Okay. Design. This is this idea of ubiquity everywhere. And what I mean by ubiquity everywhere is that this idea that you can read your campaigns, or your subscribers can read their campaigns on the devices that they are reading them on, depending upon what those devices are, right? Making sure you're as impactful as possible from a readability perspective, from a design perspective, across what are at least 140 or plus different types of devices and inboxes that people can read email campaigns in. And this isn't just about the visual content, this also starts at the text content, starting with from names. They matter quite a bit. There's a study, it's old, so I just want to preference this, that says 40% of the reason why people open your campaigns, or 40% of subscribers say the reason why they open their campaigns is because of the from name. Now, it's probably a plethora of reasons, right? Because normal human beings don't operate in absolutes. So it's probably a number of things like from name and subject line, but from name has a really clear indicator of impact on if someone's going to open your campaign or not. And the one thing to understand here is that the from name does not necessarily have to be your organizational name. Personalizing that from name from the actual individual that that person is having a conversation with or building a relationship with can have a huge impact on the open rates of those campaigns. One example of this is the Mimi O'Donnell and her team at the Lab Theater. Mimi O'Donnell is the fundraiser at the Lab Theater. This is a not-for-profit theater based in New York City. So for the not-for-profits, non-for-profits in the room, I know those are two different key distinctions, but this is right up your alley. What Mimi O'Donnell and her team found was this, is when they send out emails that are specifically related to donor asks, donations, fundraising drives, when it comes from Mimi or a member of her fundraising team, they are 7 times more likely to be opened when they come from an individual that's named or a person that has done business with that individual before, rather than simply the Lab Theater and the same subject line. 7 times higher open rate than what they see comparatively to sending just the organizational name. Another good example of this comes from the team at Drift. If you're not familiar with Drift, it's a website chat app platform that's getting a lot of big popularity right now. Drift's sales team looked at 70 million emails that they'd send over the course of 2016, 2017, and 2018. And they were looking at specifically what was the concatenation patterns that they saw between their from name and the effect and the actual impact on open rate. So they looked at 4 key types of concatenations of their salesperson's name and their organizational name together. The 4 were this: from name, the @ symbol, and the word organizational word name Drift. From first name, last name, the @ symbol, Drift. Then they did first name, the word @ Drift. And first name, last name, from Drift. They did the same thing with the single first name. What they found here is that when they use first name, the word from Drift, 26 times higher open rate than what they saw from anything other than what they had tested before. So the takeaway is this: test your from names, because there is some secret sauce that's happening there of some combination that works well for the subscribers that you are marketing to. As just an aside, Marketo at their last Adobe Summit had their internal marketing team on stage for a couple of discussions. One really interesting insight that came from that team was they have been testing from name for the past 7 years at Marketo. They have never seen a test where a specific from name did not outperform where the organizational name outperformed a specific from name. So anytime they're sending, John Doe from Marketo, always gets a higher open rate than when they're just including the words Marketo in their from name. So test your from names. From a design perspective in the visual content area, and for those of you who said he didn't talk about subject lines, there's a whole section coming, so just hold your horses. When we get into the content of the campaign itself, a couple of things to keep in mind. Single column, skinny base layouts, okay? Why single column, why skinny base layout, if you will? All of the major social networks, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the like, have all trained us to scroll with our single thumb or a finger. We can't break the mold. It's the behavior and the pattern that's been taught. We have to do the same thing inside the inbox. So the pattern that you're creating for is the scroll. How do people get through the content with a single finger or their thumb and consume all the campaign content that you've got available to them? Really great example here from Tommy John. I can get through all the content without pinching and zooming and scrolling down that skinny-based layout. A couple of particular design frameworks that can work really, really well to get to a skinny-based layout is first the inverted pyramid. By the way, when I tell you these two types of design frameworks, you're gonna see them in literally every single campaign that you look at for the rest of your life because they just work and everyone does them. The inverted pyramid is the first one, right? Going from broad messaging down to what do you want me to click on and repeating that pattern every single time down the template or the design that you're creating. The second one is the zigzag because our eyes naturally go right to left or left to right depending upon how you lay out the content, right? So inverted pyramid or zigzag. Still, regardless of design pattern that you choose or that you choose to test and look at, it still needs to be a single column and skinny based layout, and you'll start to see these structures as we go through these examples. So here's a couple really key examples, really good examples. This one's from the Kennedy Theater. So they do 37 events a month and they promote them every single week. You can see again, there is an inverted, slightly isosceles triangle happening here. So again, pushing down to the content that people care about, single column, skinny based layout. This is the Think with Google newsletter, more B2B skewed from the Think with Google team, right? I can get through the entire content through a skinny-based single column layout. Do you remember the pinch and zoom example that I showed you at the beginning of our conversation from Brick, the Brick team, the one that you really had, that was all these multicolors and you really had to zoom into? This is their redesigned newsletter. So they're providing visual hierarchy in terms of numbers they're using, showing you this is the first, second, third, fourth thing that you should care about. There's a very clear inverted pyramid structure happening here, although they make those buttons full width in this particular case. Another great example from the folks at Envision. I love what Envision's doing here. They slim up that header, they get right to the point of what they want you to care about. Again, you've got that inverted pyramid that's coming straight down to the call to action in this case. And then they're showing you hierarchy through the design too. So what you should really care about is at the top, and then what you should kind of care about falls below the fold, and they do that with visual hierarchy as well. So instead of having an image with all these calls to action that are sitting here, our favorite design things or news stories from the week, they're just including simple text-based links here to show you that they'd rather you just pay attention to what's happening right in this section of the campaign. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to have necessarily when you're outside of mobile or outside of that 480 pixel width that we drop into a mobile responsive screen size into. Doesn't necessarily mean as we get larger that you have to go with a single column layout because we've got responsive frameworks at our disposal these days. When you're in something that's 600 to 480 pixels or that desktop environment, we can still stack content right to left. So this is that same Think with Google newsletter when we are in between 480 to 600 pixels. That is a desktop or webmail screen size, traditionally. Do not go above 600 pixels width on an email, ever. It breaks basically everything, and you will not be able to be seen in every single inbox that's at your disposal. When you drop into a mobile perspective or below 480 pixels, then that 600 pixel design can respond and then simply drops the content into a single column or skinny-based layout. So in this case, same newsletter, it's just dropping what was right to left, top to bottom, and stacking it on a 50-50 grid down the page. Fonts and buttons. So along from a visual perspective and the structure of the content that you create, it's also about the size and amount of area that you give from a font and button perspective. Why does this matter? You can just look up on the screen right now. This particular headline comes from the folks at Campaign Monitor, and it says how we got 127% increase in click-through rates by simply redesigning this blog subscriber's email. There's one difference that they changed. Text link to green button. 127% increase in click-through rates by simply having a button. Now, what are best practices when we talk about fonts and buttons? On the font sites, minimum headline of 30 pixels. This is 30 pixels right here. Body copy, minimum of 16. Why 16? Anything below 16, the average human arm at the average human arm length, the average human eyesight, has to be pulled in and brought closer to your face if it is anything below 16. That is why we have some people that are looking at their phones like this, because we're sending fonts that are way, way too small. Okay? Buttons at a minimum 44 by 44 pixels. Why 44 by 44? Because that is the minimum tappable area of a human finger. This comes from the trillions of interactions that Apple has had across their smartphones and devices, but that is the minimum area that a human finger needs to be able to tap. Okay? Now, also, please put some white space around your buttons, because some of us have big, what we call fat thumb or fat finger syndrome, and we'll like touch things and they're outside of that button area. Just make sure we're not going to touch another call to action that we're trying to not intend to do so. Here are some really great examples of fonts and buttons that are done well. I'm not going to speak to the baloney that's happening here in the header in the Salesforce template, because I think this is all distracting. But again, inverted pyramid, appropriate size fonts and buttons. This is 28. This is 16. This button's about 260 pixels by, let's give or take 110, 120. And it says get the ebook. Note the contrasting color here, the orange over the blue space, or white space, if you will. So that high contrast between the button. And again, you've got about 30 to 32 pixels of white space around this button, or blue space in this case with this particular template design. So you know exactly the call to action that you're going to. This is a wonderful example of best practices around fonts and buttons. This is a webinar invitation that's coming from Shopify and BounceX. Two things that I think it does really well, not just on the fonts and hierarchy, not just on the font sizes, but also on the hierarchy and placement of those calls to action. So the first thing you'll notice is even without taking and going below the fold on the email campaign, you can already make a conversion decision. Your button is sitting right there. Count me in, okay? It's appropriately sized. If I'm like, hey, I want to get on this webinar, good, I can hit that button and I barely have to scroll to actually get to that call to action. When I start scrolling down the page though, what this email does really, really well is it repeats the process below the fold, if you will. So they have a follow-up call to action of will you attend, yes or no. So for those readers that want to make a decision right away, I've got a button at the top. It's very clear. I can go through that. For those that want to be repeated, I'll show you this again so you can see it. As you scroll down the page, you've got a repeat of that call to action. And again, look at the visual hierarchy that they're creating here. Green button versus a gray button. Look at the calls to action that are simply asking very direct questions. Count me in. Yes and no. Another great example here. This one blew my mind when it first started dropping from Starbucks about 1.5 years ago. These are contextually relevant buttons, okay? They change their call to action and what they say based on the size of the screen that the user is looking at the email campaign. So when Starbucks launched their toasted coconut cold brew latte about 18, 20 months ago, they also started doing contextual buttons in their campaigns. You will notice on the left is the desktop version of that campaign. So above 480 pixels, Starbucks said, okay, the call to action is gonna be delicious details, right there, okay? Because if I'm in desktop, I'm probably browsing, okay? I'm not on the go. I'm clearly tethered to something, whether it's a laptop or a desktop, if you will. But when I drop below 480 pixels, same email, different call to action, different URL, order now. So they changed the call to action, the text, they also changed the URL. Delicious Details goes to the microsite or the landing page for the toasted coconut cold brew latte, or cold brew, excuse me, I should say. Order now drops a grande toasted coconut cold brew right into my Starbucks app for the nearest location within that Starbucks app and allows me to instantly order it if I would like to do so. Contextually relevant buttons. They know the user is probably on the go in a different headspace, a different psychological headspace between sitting on a laptop versus being on the go. And they're changing the calls to action and the URLs. This takes one line of code to do this, 15 characters to make this change. For the love of all things holy, please eliminate the words click here from your vocabulary. No one clicks anymore. Also, click here is like the most generic call to action I've ever heard in my entire life. I've never seen a generic call to action beat a specific call to action in call to action A/B testing. Specific calls to action, get the ebook, count me in, will always perform higher than read more. Click here. Too generic, get specific. If you're looking for ideas on better buttons, there's a really good better button generator from the folks at Compacity Interactive. Just Google Compacity Interactive better button generator. 5 words will get you here. They have 2 versions of it now. This is what it does. It shows you generic calls to action or buttons and gives you 20 or 25 different options, spin the wheel if you will, of better buttons that you can be testing. Get to the point. You have about 8 seconds. Don't waste them. 3 good examples that are doing this well. Brilliant, bike on the left-hand side. Get green before they're gone. I barely have to scroll down to know exactly what this email wants me to do. Buy the green bike. Done, end of story. Don't want it? Good, delete, out, okay? Handy, winter 1-day sale, 50% off just for you. All above the fold. Don't have to think about it. 8 seconds, done, gone. And if we're gonna do this with text, we've got about 8 seconds to do that too. This takes 7.2 seconds to read for an average 9th grader. So they're actually utilizing text-based content and judging it against that 8-second rule as well. So we can do text-based content that allows people to read and get that takeaways in just the same amount of time. Let images do the talking. Okay, we live in a very pretty society that likes pretty things. There's a reason why Pinterest is so popular. There's also a reason why every single wedding we go to is now the Pinterestification of, weddings, because they all look the same, because we're all looking at the same things on Pinterest, right? There's a method to this madness. We like pretty things, okay? Your emails are no different. And for all the B2B marketers in the room that are gonna talk about image to text ratio, I'm gonna get there, calm down. But if you can say something within an image, please do so, okay? Say it with beautiful imagery. There is a reason why we are spending $1,000 on these phones is because we want things to look better, brighter, more visual. Take advantage of the opportunity that you have here. Some really great examples of this. Warby Parker, this was their inlay collection that they just launched a few weeks ago. You can make a buying decision on this just via the visuals that are being presented here, right? So the inlay edition, you've got very simple skinny header up here, perfect examples of product imagery, little tidbit about the product itself, and then here it is. Again, notice the simple calls to action. Notice the contrast between that calls to action. Notice the appropriate size buttons and fonts here. Another good example here from Starbucks, who converted all of their promotional messages to 100% images this past year. Notice the slimmed up header here. They get right to the point. They're not wasting the good old hallmark issues that we see in some of those examples I shared before. Then as you scroll through the content of this campaign, leveraging just beautiful product and lifestyle imagery to elicit that click or elicit an interest in a particular product. Just keep in mind here that Starbucks is doing a lot from an accessibility perspective. There's alt tags that are included on every single one of these images, so that if anybody from a disability perspective needed to be able to read this content, they all have alt tags. They're all descriptively described within those alt tags themselves. So if you are gonna let images do the talking, please take the time to make those images as accessible as possible for the readers that maybe do not have the ability to actually see the content on that campaign. Just keep in mind that your text-based campaigns are still relevant if you're sending your HTML-based versions. Typically, as I mentioned before, when you just take your auto-generated HTML and spit it into your text-based version, it doesn't do a great job of making that text-based version look pretty, if you will, or clean. Clean it up, make sure your URLs are simple and structured well. Make sure there's not weird characters that are sitting on that text-based campaign, so that if it does hit those 80 or million so wearable devices, they can actually read the content of those campaigns that you're putting forth. If you need inspiration around this idea of ubiquity and just email design in general, the best place, period, end of story, to go is reallygoodemails.com. Reallygoodemails.com coincidentally also launched their first conference called Unspam. Great conference if you're really an email nerd this past year. But what I love about Really Good Emails is what you just saw this video go through here. That drop down on the left-hand side is essentially hundreds of different categories of different design types. B2B, B2C. There's automation flows in here like a welcome series, an app download series, an abandoned cart examples, previous purchase examples, all these different holiday, different verticals, all these different categories of designs that you can look at. These are the best of the best that's been submitted by email marketers around the world and then curated by about 5 email strategists across the globe. They also have a really good resources section right there. That resources section has free templates, has beautiful guides, in-depth guides on email marketing that you can leverage too, from design, accessibility, setting up your ESP, all these different guides that you can utilize from a best practice perspective. If you're looking for tools for ubiquity, how do I understand what my email looks like in every single inbox? There's two, Litmus and Email on Acid. Both of these do two core things. The first of which is this idea of what does my email look like in every single inbox? You drop your code into these, it shows you what your email looks like. In this case, this is a Marketo template that we were developing for a client. And then it builds that email in 120 different screens that email may be consumed in. You can do this for free. They'll show you 3 inbox previews of whatever client you would like to select. Or you can pay, I think the per month cost is somewhere between about $100 to $150 depending upon which particular account that you have. And you can see your email in all those different inbox and device types, from heaven forbid Lotus Notes all the way through iOS 12. If you're still on Lotus Notes, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. There still are companies on Lotus Notes. I taught at a very popular school that was still on Lotus Notes. And I was like, what the H? They're on Lotus Notes. There you go. All right, design, moving through those options. We've done from name, we've done the actual visual design within the email. Let's go back to subject lines. They are extremely important. Right after from name, arguably the second thing that will have the most impact on your open rates is your subject lines. And let me just dispel a rumor that we've had to deal with for years and years in our industry around subject lines. Subject line length does not matter. Okay, size does not matter when it comes to if someone opens your campaigns. Phrasee, who's arguably the category leader when it comes to subject line testing and best practices, that's Phrassee, has been looking at a decade of research around this topic, and this was the result. After looking at every single research paper, publicly available research paper and data set that was available around this topic, they found a variance, you'll see the adjusted R-square here, of 0.1%. What that adjusted R-square means is that subject line length had a 0.1% impact on if someone actually opened or not. In other words, it doesn't matter. Your subject line can be 1 character, it can be 1,000 characters, that does not elicit an open. Across 700 billion emails, they found 4 key things that elicit an open, or impact that open rate, I should say. The first of which is sentiment. This is this idea that words matter. The emotions you convey matter more than the length of the subject line. Are you being nerdy? Are you being comical? Are you being direct? Are you being attentive? What are the emotions you convey in your subject line? Those matter. The next is diversity. And this is this idea of different strokes for different folks. Let me ground this example in a very real life example. If my mom is gonna feign surprise, if she's gonna say, I'm surprised at something, my mom will go, Michael, I'm very surprised at this. Okay. A 16-year-old may go, I am shooketh at this, okay? You see the distinction? We talk in our subgroups in different ways. How I talk to my group of 10 best friends from college is very different than how I talk in front of an audience or how I talk with different clients that we may be having a discussion with, right? There's a level of different terms, of acronyms, of words that we use. We have to understand that our audiences in our subscriber databases are exactly the same. They talk differently. The 55-plus-year-old that's in your database versus the 18-year-old talks very differently. And we don't do a good job of segmenting at a subject line level, of making sure we communicate them to very, very effectively. I'm gonna show you some examples of this in just a second. But again, different strokes for different folks. We do this on one particular client at Godfrey. It's a manufacturer of control valves for the oil and gas industry. And they have 2 key personas that they're marketing to, one of which is typically a 50 or older white male engineer. The other one is a 30 or younger male or female, usually not white engineer. They always have 2 different subject lines because those 2 audiences talk very differently about the same topic. They use different words to communicate the same meaning. The next one is sophistication. This is this idea that the more simple, the better. Please note that I did not say the shorter, the better. I said the more simple you can convey the same thing, the better. Get to the point again. Emojis, surprising, I know, but they will make good subject lines, those that are diverse, sentiment, utilize sentiment, and use sophistication well. They will make better subject lines better, and they will make bad subject lines worse. Okay? They have a huge impact on the performance of an open rate in both B2B and B2C. Just because you're in a conservative industry doesn't mean that people aren't using emojis in that industry. A couple of things to keep in mind around emojis, because this tends to be a hot topic. They do work. I mean, this wasn't the only research study. Experian, MailChimp, almost every single ESP has published some study that says at least 50% or more of the emails that sent an emoji had a positive impact on open rates, a higher impact on open rates. Now, around this idea of B2B, a couple things to tell you. There's not great research around which particular emojis are working well in the B2B space, but we know that they're being leveraged in personal and work email in a one-to-one communication style. So that same Adobe Consumer Insights study sliced off part of that data that they saw from white-collar workers, and they asked them 2 questions around emojis. How often and what type of emojis are you using in your personal and your work email? And these are the answers. You will see that a good percentage, 42% of white-collar workers have used an emoji in their work emails, and more than 70% are using them in their personal emails, okay? Now, I constantly have this battle with marketing teams, with our clients, around the idea of testing emojis, especially within some of the more conservative industries that we work in at Godfrey. And the best example, and I can tell you the one that's been the most impactful to me for swaying the conversation, is I talk about my dad. My dad's 67, okay? Now, I'm of the sort of, like, I'm on the trailing edge of those people that really, like, adopted emojis. I'm not, like, a big emoji person. Anybody that's my friend, Jake will know this, like, I always use a period at the end of a sentence, even in a text message. I'm that guy. Like, I'm just type A, really grammar crazy Nazi. Like, that's just me, I'm sorry. My dad is a 67-year-old retired man who uses more emojis than I ever know. Any of my friends, any of my family members, my 67-year-old father uses more emojis than anyone else. The man grew up in rural England. He's an engineer by trade. He's literally the most conservative person I know that's around in my family, and he uses more emojis than anyone else in my life, okay? I will ask my dad, how are you today? And he'll go, sunshine, outdoor, symbol, whatever he maybe do, gardening, thumbs up. Then he'll send me the love. And I'm like, okay, you're clearly too busy for your own child. Right, but the key takeaway is this, is that just discounting older demographics or conservative industries over not using emojis is doing it a disservice. You've got to slice off a segment of your database and test it to see if it actually works or not. You'd be surprised. Here are the top 15 emojis that were used in 2017 and 2018 as judged by MailChimp. So if you're looking for different emojis to potentially test, these are the ones that were utilized the most in those last 2 years. Punctuation matters. This one drives me nuts. So along with those 4 key things, sentiment, sophistication, diversity, and emojis, out of those 700 billion emails that Phrasee looked at, there was also some real interesting insights that they found too that weren't necessarily macro level things, but just really odd micro level insights that they found. One of them being the idea that punctuation matters. You're wondering why all these email campaigns use ... use the ellipse? It's because it works. It is the punctuation that has the most positive correlation on open rate. Period. Period, period. I'm glad people got that joke. But the other thing that drives me crazy about this insight is, this is when I just want to quit my job and be like, why are we even doing marketing? Because y'all are crazy. Normal people are crazy. Look at the trends from 3 exclamation points is better than 1 exclamation point, which is not as good as 2. And I'm like, that's it, I can't do this anymore. Because apparently you have to be really excited, but you can't just be excited, or you never want to be kind of more excited than excited. I'm like, what are we even doing? People are nuts. Some other things, some micro-level insights they found are superlatives matter, and some interesting ones that had real positive correlation on open rates are the ones that you see in front of you. So things like brand new, latest, and exciting had positive impacts on open rates, as you see there from a percentage perspective. The most perfect of gift actually has a negative impact on open rates. And the most mediocre of adjectives, the word good, also has a not so good impact on open rates too. So consider which superlatives you're using in your open rates, in your subject lines, because they can have a real interesting impact on your open rates. Things can be special, but not everything is wonderful. Just really interesting, weird things that you couldn't even understand before, and then you have these big global sets of data and they give you some really interesting insights. Our selling words are actually really positive for open rates. For years, we told you don't include these selling words. It doesn't matter. They do not impact deliverability. Period, end of story. I'm not going to debate that one. It's been debated. We've put it to bed. Selling words can go in subject lines. Okay, good, right. Buy one, get one. The good old Payless shoe stores of subject lines. Say that 5 times fast. 90% impact on open rates, positive impact. Using the word prices, deal, and worth, all positive words that you can use from an open rate perspective. Using the words can't or won't, questions often make a difference. When you start a question with can't or won't, it can have a positive impact on open rates, but nothing that starts with who or what seems to be has a positive impact on open rates either. So just consider how you're formulating those questions. If you're looking for a free tool that you can use or the paid version, this is Phrasee. It's phrassee.com or .co.uk. They have a whole machine learning platform that you can essentially pay for on a monthly basis. You put in your subject lines, it will tell you what the highest performing subject line is going to be without you testing it, okay? One of the things that they give you from a free perspective is this, their sentiment analysis tool. If you just want to understand what sentiment you're conveying with the words in your subject line, you email it to them. Great lead generation tactic, by the way. You email them your subject line. They send you a dynamic URL that takes you to your sentiment analysis report. It will show you, for this subject line, available now, North Carolina Charter School funding, this is what you're conveying from an emotional perspective, from a sentiment perspective. It's direct, it's slightly curious, kind of friendly, but it's not offbeat and it's not urgent. So if you were trying to convey urgency, you probably need to go back and rewrite that particular subject line. So that's Phrasee. Okay, we're about 10 minutes from lunch, so we're almost there. Interactivity. This is this idea of having some fun in the inbox, okay? Gone are the days when we just have to utilize table-based email campaigns. I'm really sorry if you're sending to Outlook 2006, there's nothing I can do about that. But for the vast majority of us in the room, we can do a lot of really interesting things from an interactivity perspective that are well beyond just flat images and JPEGs. So let's look at those that we can do. It starts with the GIF. The GIF gets a bad rap when it comes to email, but it is very, very impactful. We have seen study after study after study that says interactive campaigns have a higher conversion rate, higher engagement rate than flat or static HTML-based campaigns. So a couple examples here that I love. Core Power. It's your birthday, rolling out the yoga mat. One thing that Starbucks does really, really well, a tactic that I love from a GIF perspective, is they're leveraging that green ring that's along all of their cups and their cold cups. They typically put their GIF right where the fold is going to be on your device. So that GIF makes you want to sort of scroll down the page to see if there's more interesting information that might be below the fold, if you will. Shazam launched their new app this year by showing you all the features of that new app rather than just telling you about it. We will not have a conversation with how small this font is, but suffice it to say it's too small. One also interesting thing that I loved that Shazam did is they leveraged Giphy.com to host these GIFs. That makes them load very quickly. It also makes them socially shareable. The last one is from Tokyo Bike, which is a super bougie bike company from, surprise, Tokyo. They have a little Tokyo Bike, the tiny version, 27 different colors of that. Rather than showing you 27 different images, they show you the GIF with those colors, right? A couple of things to keep in mind with GIFs. They should support your brand, okay? They shouldn't be random. They should support the brand messaging or your brand icons that you're utilizing. They should elicit some interactivity. What do you want the user to do? The GIF should support that action, okay? So support the brand, support the action, or drive interest in the campaign like the Starbucks one does with getting you down the page. Some other good examples. Here are two from a B2B perspective. Evernote on the left-hand side. Find more, know more, upgrade now. I love this example here from Superhuman, which is a new email platform that's on the marketplace. Every time they roll out a feature, they tell you what that feature is all about, and then they show a GIF of what that feature does. If you haven't taken a look at Superhuman, I would encourage you to do so. It's a really, really cool inbox experience. Some other examples from a B2B perspective. Box on the left-hand side, run better meetings. So they have appropriately sized buttons and fonts here, and then they show a GIF right below the fold. Asana, if you're not familiar with Asana, it's a team collaboration platform that came out of Facebook. And anytime they launch a new feature, they just use their brand iconography to bring that messaging to life. So in this case, the message is a faster Asana, so they're using a sprinter in their brand iconography. And the last one, which I really, really enjoy, is this example comes from the folks at Curata, which is a content management platform that plugs straight into Marketo. You're going to go out to the sponsors area and you're going to have conversations at some point, I would imagine, with the sponsors. And what I hate is that terrible follow-up email that all those sponsors are going to tell you, like, we saw you, we talked to you, what, here's our platform, bye, blah, 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 blah. Okay, great, goodbye, just delete, don't even pay attention. Curata does something really interesting that I enjoy. They take a GIF of the sales guy at the conference. So that's the guy you saw in the booth who gave you the demo. And it's much more impactful from a human perspective because you saw that guy at the demo booth and he's doing something crazy, okay? And then they back it up with copy and content that's below the fold here. So those are some really good examples that how GIFs can work for B2B as well. Probably the best example that I've seen GIFs work really well to support a brand, to support the messaging and email content, and to drive conversion and engagement is from the folks at Wistia. If you're not familiar with Wistia, it's a video hosting platform you can utilize to embed and host video across all your landing pages or websites. Allows you a ton of flexibility around how that video displays to the individual user. But one thing they do really, really well is because they are a video hosting platform, their content on their blog, which is where they're driving most of their traffic from their email campaigns, is all done in text and in a video that supports that messaging. And they include a little tidbit of that video in that particular email newsletter that they send. But look what they're testing here. They're testing a button overlay, no play button overlay, and then a play button with things coming in from the right-hand side or messaging coming in from the right or left-hand side. So they're testing here specifically when you have a GIF that's supporting video messaging, what is the appropriate thing you should have on that GIF to elicit the click? Is it a play button that causes that? Is it just the motion of the GIF? Or is it things like adding some of those layers and those post-edit features that you can do in production to that GIF as well? But Wistia does a really, really good job of showing that off on any given one of their particular newsletters. Now, just keep in mind, GIFs are largely supported. I think 92% of inboxes support GIFs at this point, even Outlook. As of 3 weeks ago, Outlook 2015 and above all support GIFs, okay? One thing to keep in mind is for that trailing 8% that just haven't got on the boat yet, is that if it doesn't support a GIF, all hope is not lost. All those inboxes do is just take the first frame of your GIF and display it. So this is an example from Jack Spade. In this particular example on the left-hand side, that's the GIF you would see, this layering animation. But if it didn't, this is just the first frame of that GIF, and that's what that user will see. So even if you leverage a GIF and it's not supported, doesn't mean people aren't going to see something. It will get supported by the first frame. So the key takeaway there is this, is make sure the first frame of the GIF is something that makes sense for the messaging that you're trying to support. Now, beyond GIFs, we can do some really interesting things like real-time or conversational data. This is a Twitter conversation happening inside an email campaign. It's 56 lines of code. At the time, it worked across all platforms minus Outlook. Can't solve for everyone. But this particular brand is not focused on Outlook, so this worked for them. And it filtered out sentiment as well and bad words. So anything that was profane or negative was filtered out of this list as well. But this is a live Twitter conversation around a hashtag that's happening for an event. So if you're doing a fundraising drive, if you're launching a product, if you've got an associated hashtag with an event or something, embedding that conversation, that social conversation that people are having online is one way that you can bring interactivity into your email designs. Here's another example of interactive content. Again, beyond the GIF. This is an actual Q&A, a quizzing app at the bottom of the email campaign that has answer validation. So you can answer these questions, and it will actually tell you if you are answering these questions right or wrong. It will also tell you if you've won something. So as you go through the questions, and if you've won something, it's loading in a winner or non-winner on the bottom below the quiz itself. Fully interactive content, 128 lines of code, and this worked across Outlook 2015 and above. Where are we going with this idea of interactivity? Chad White, again, former research director at Litmus, called this the mailable microsite. We are probably getting to a place where we are going to have a full web experience inside of the inbox. Nordstrom's has started to do that with their campaigns. More importantly, this is my firstborn, McDougal. Now, beyond that, we're also getting into some really interesting places. There's a platform that was just bought by Salesforce called Rebel. And Rebel did probably the craziest interactive designs that we've seen on the marketplace and adopted them basically across all platforms from Outlook 2015 and above. And here's what they're doing. I'll just show you these examples. This is the inbox in the cart. This essentially is the ability to order products and dynamically create a cart inside of the inbox. This is from Nest. You can see here we're actually pressing add to cart and then the number of quantity that we want. At the bottom of the email, it's dynamically creating a cart. You hit this checkout button and you'd be able to check out with whatever that checkout process is right away. It dynamically generates a URL for the shopping cart. You're done. End of story. Another example that Rebel did was this. This is the buy now in the inbox. So this is a version of their cart abandonment email in the inbox. Again, showing you the products that you left there. In this case, the call to action is, do you want to buy it right now? And they actually integrated mobile wallets into this purchase process. You didn't even need to leave the inbox. All bought without going to the website. The next thing they did was reviews natively. So we're all eliciting feedback and reviews inside our campaigns. This was an example they did for the Home Depot. So Home Depot, you bought the product, you get the review thing, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks later. You don't have to go to their microsite to give it. You don't have to go to Qualtrics.com or whatever, third-party Delighted.com or whatever you're utilizing to get that feedback. You do it right in the email campaign. You hit submit. It passes it through on the back end. Good news and bad news. Rebel was public and available for any brand to leverage, got bought by Salesforce. Now it's getting folded into Salesforce Marketing Cloud. But you're starting to see that this is the level of interactivity that we're getting in the inbox, okay? Now, couple that with anything that we've talked about. AMP, for example. You couple interactivity with an AMP platform where this stuff loads as quickly as possible. Then you put a mobile wallet around it, or just even in a desktop experience, integrating the mobile wallet from there. The takeaway is this. We are this close to not having to have a post-click conversion process within the inbox. We don't even have to leave the inbox to buy something if we wanted to. It's all there for us as well. Okay, we are about 1 minute and 40 seconds away from lunch, so I'm going to pause right here and let you go a little bit early, which means you're coming back early. So lunch, we want to start back here at 11:50 promptly, so try and be in your seat by 11:48 if you can, and we're going to dive into personalization and segmentation in the last 50 or so minutes of our chat. Enjoy your lunch. I hope the cookie is good. All right, we have 40 minutes and just a tad, and I've got some pretty meaty content coming through, so there may be a time where I skip through slides. Just know, again, you've got access to all these slides. I'm also happy to answer any questions that you'd like to talk about when you've had some time to digest them. But just note that I'm trying to get you out of here right at 12:30, and there's still some meat to put on the bones, if you will, and we've had a good discussion, so a little delayed in timing. So let's dive into personalization and segmentation. Arguably probably the most time-consuming of anything you're going to do from an email marketing strategy perspective, but the most rewarding. Why does personalization and segmentation matter? First of which is understand, well, there are literally tons of segmentation opportunities that we can do from our lists themselves. The good news is there's a really good structure to those segmentation opportunities, and it is these pillars here. I claim no credit to these pillars. This was done by the team at Email Monday, but this is a really cohesive look at essentially the 4 key pillars and all the different types of segmentation you can do under those pillars. So they begin to start a framework to understand, okay, what data do we need to be able to create these types of segmentation? A couple of things to note. The first 3, these geographics, demographics, and psychographics, these are typically segments that we use for more consumer audiences. So B2C sort of leverages these segments more often because they typically have access to this data, or it is easier for them to actually segment based on this data than it is the last one. If you're a B2B marketer, this is usually where you're segmenting and doing personalization based on behavioral actions that the user is doing, because we don't have good access or we don't do a good job of building data profiles on our users that may include this sort of data. I'm not saying everyone does, I'm just saying it in aggregate. So you've got a ton of different opportunities to do segmentation and personalization that you can do. And I'm just going to expose you to a couple key examples of why this matters, as well as show you some brands that are doing segmentation and personalization really well, either by themselves or in tandem together. Why this matters is because typically when we do a one-size-fits-all campaign that goes out to all of our subscribers versus when we segment and then send them personalized content based on that segment, we typically see, more often than not, and when I say more often, I mean 50% more of the time or not, see a higher return on investment when we segment content or when we do segmentation on campaigns. This is a great example from a piece of research that the Optimove blog did. So they looked at 40 different retailers, and when they sent emails, these were typically subscription lists between about 100,000 and well into the millions. When they sent one campaign to every single customer, the average return on investment was $28, okay? When those retailers segmented their subscribers by spend, right? And you can see how this was done. Active longtime users, VIPs, low-tier customers, recently churned, new customers registered yesterday, about to turn reactivated. You can see the return on investment when they customize by this sort of segmentation. But the aggregate takeaway was this: the average ROI almost doubled when you segmented customers versus when you did not, okay? So that's why those segmentation implications are so important, because even though we see typical averages when we're sending return on investment averages when we send to all subscribers, when we segment, that's when we see real true value come out of email. So let's look at some segmentation and personalization opportunities as well as examples of those. The first of which is just around first name and name personalization in general. This is a great example from Native Deodorants. They're a hippy-dippy deodorant brand that's out of California. I love their order confirmation emails. You will note here, beyond just their logo, the headline starts off right with personalization, first name personalization. Luis, you rock. Then they get into the copy. It was just another mundane day at our office when suddenly Jackie looked over at the computer, her eyes widened. We did it, she exclaimed. We got an order from Luis Selgas. And then they continue to personalize the data based on that user's actual first and last name. If you're looking for an easy way to leverage segmentation and deliver personalized content, there's a great platform called Movable Ink. Movable Ink allows you to essentially take any part of your email campaign, header, footer, main body copy, hero, whatever you have your campaign structured in, and then say, okay, I'm gonna drop a line of code here, and Movable Ink will allow you to take any data set that you've got and personalize a piece of content based on that data set. So maybe it's gender. I want males, females to have this particular type. Maybe it's average spend. I would like high spending customers to see this piece of content. I would like low spending customers to see this, and the various different levels of spending in between. It can do geographic, basically any piece of segmentation you would like to do, and it automates that all in the back end so you can use one line of code rather than having to deliver segmentation through your actual platform. One example of a company that did this really well is Yard House. So Yard House, of course, is a draft beer place. Used to be able to get a yard of beer. Now it's still just the pint. But Yard House wanted to be able to deliver geographic-based content based on the location of that actual Yard House location and what microbrews or craft breweries were serving in that location. They held everything the same for 1 year, including design. Subject lines were almost consistent month to month from the year previously. And what they found is when they leveraged Movable Ink to include the names of the actual craft breweries being served in the geographic location of where that user was most often opening their campaigns, they saw a 32% year-over-year lift in click-through rates by simply saying, hey, these are the brews that are available in the geographic region where you often most go to Yard House or open our campaigns. New subscribers is a personalization opportunity, right? So for those net new people, what are the opportunities that you have to do there? Maybe it's education about how that individual can actually do business with you. Maybe it's a welcome series, which we'll get to welcome series in just a second. We can also do an onboarding flow from a segmentation opportunity. So content that's being sent to net new customers and onboarding them through the customer experience. What do we want them to do now? What do we want them to do next? What they can expect from us, in 5 days and 6 days? What can they expect on their bill? Or longer term relationships beyond those particular data sets. Celebration or milestone emails are perfect segmentation opportunities for your database. Anything that celebrates the user right after the welcome series is going to be the most impactful campaign you send. Welcome series will always be the most impactful, always gets the highest open rate and click-through rates. Then it's anything that's a celebration or milestone. Then it's anything that's transactional. Then it's anything promotional. Celebrations or milestone emails are perfect moments to elicit engagement with a user. These can be things like happy birthday. They could be a spending threshold that customer has met. They could be an activity threshold that customer has met, but it's anything that celebrates a milestone. Here's a great example from PetSmart doing essentially a birthday treat for McDougal every single year. happy birthday from McDougal. So you've got personalization in the subject line. The segmentation is from a milestone perspective, and it's delivered on a specific day based on when that particular dog, in this case, when that dog's birthday is. Another example of this from Core Power Yoga you've seen already, so we'll skip over that one. A B2B example of celebration or milestones, this is from the folks at Ring Central. So they have a platform called Glip, and they celebrate your Glip-iversary every 3 months or every 90 days. So every 3 months, they're sending you a personalized email that's based on what you're doing within the platform. You can see here, written 437 posts, invited 0 users, started 3 conversations. So again, noting those milestones and celebration opportunities. This is an example from Gary Reger, who's my ophthalmologist in LA. I share this example not because this is anything pretty, this is heinous, right? But what Dr. Gary has told me is that they send 3 emails a year: a welcome to a new customer, milestone celebration, and then an actual, celebration opportunity, and then the milestone is their annual exam reminder. He goes, it's really, really funny. I would think that the milestone email around annual exam would elicit butts and seats, because that's how they judge ROI on their marketing spend, is how many net new or returning visitors does it put in the seats at their practice. He goes, but it's completely opposite. The email that drives the most net new appointments is the happy birthday email. People love things that celebrate them, so take advantage of that little nuance. Another good example here from American Airlines, celebrating your status, right? So again, leveraging data to celebrate your status or a milestone achievement. This essentially is all the data that they collected on this particular user in that particular year. You flew 137 times around the earth. You spent way too much time on an airplane. Here was your favorite city. There you go. Celebrate the user, whether it's good or bad. Purchase intent or cart abandonment. This is a segmentation opportunity that we have at our disposal. And this is not just for e-commerce people in the room, because this can be essentially re-architected around just content down and white paper downloads or interest in certain types of subjects on your website. Amazon Prime, arguably the best at doing this, right? They understand, Amazon understands based on the average time you're spending on a page, what's the likelihood of you're actually going to purchase that product within the next day, week, or 90 days. And they customize that to understand what are we going to actually deliver into their cart based on if they actually do not purchase something in that process. And that's why you get these very personalized and segmented emails that are based on what did that user look at, how likely are they to purchase, and then delivering that content back into the inbox to see if they can elicit a conversion and get the purchase. Bless you. The other thing that you can do on that case is beyond just purchase intent, but doing cart abandonment, right? So if someone puts something in their cart, they browse away or they abandon that cart, understanding what's the time that you should send that email campaign. Is it 30 seconds afterwards? Probably not. It's probably in the neighborhood of 18 to 27 minutes after that cart abandonment is typically where we see the most successful cart abandonment emails happen. This is a great example from Bonobos. You've got an item in the cart. In this case, they use their brand icon, which is a briefcase, and the call to action is forget something. And then they have a little dialogue in your call to action around actually clicking to your cart. Purchase history is another way that we can personalize in content within inside the campaign. So Bonobos here understands that this individual only buys size large shirts. So rather than saying shop this t-shirt, they say shop size large. And that's a really key thing for Bonobos' particular demographic. These are men who don't like to shop online, that want to get this over with as quickly as possible. So putting shop size large saves you about 4.5 seconds in the transaction process, right? Saving time, make that conversion action a little bit easier. Post-purchase from a service experience, right? One example of this done really, really well that's both segmented based on user behavior and then personalized based on that experience with that user is any experience that you have within the Apple Genius Bar. For those of you that have had that, you've probably seen this email hit your inbox. You go in for an appointment with the Genius Bar, or you buy a product and they take your email address, which is attached to your iCloud account. And then you get an email. It's usually between 42 and 75 minutes after that shopping experience or Genius Bar experience. Look at the personalization here. How was your experience with Zach? That's the guy who I had a Genius Bar experience with. And it said, how did Zach do? And you can rate it 1 to 5. So again, segmented to a user that's actively had an experience with your brand within the last certain amount of time, personalized based on that experience. In this case, the customer service representative, the CSR, was named Zach. Pre and post event. So anybody that's doing anything around events, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're a theater, whether you're going to a trade show as a B2B brand, or that, if you've got a list that you can actively market to before the event, what do people need to know before they come? You saw that from Digital Summit, right? Post-event, what would you like them to do after the event? Again, opportunities for segmentation based on by event, and then personalized based on the behaviors around that event itself. Location is something you're starting to see tied to email transactions. And one brand that's doing this well, I think, or at least trying to do it well, is Tommy John. So at the end of Tommy John's emails, what they're doing is based on your past purchases, they're showing you where you can buy that within a 20-mile radius of where your shipping address is. So they just append the bottom of the email based on your last shipping address and show you where you can buy that product if you need it without going through buying it online. So leveraging again, this is personalized based on the shipping address zip code of where you have bought that product in the past. Weather. This is probably one of the most underrated, but probably going to be one of the most utilized segmentation opportunities and personalization opportunities that we're going to see over the next few years. IBM bought Weather.com, I don't know if you know that, like 4 years ago to the tune of $500 million. They have fully integrated all the weather data that they get from Weather.com into the Watson platform, and that's not just for shipping and logistics, that's not just for fulfillment, that's not just for R&D and planning purposes, it's also for us as marketers. Within the IBM platform now, we can customize based on what's the temperature in the marketplace. What's seasonality look like in that particular geographic region where that user is opening? And even better, when we want to stop automations or start automations. For the sake of example, if there is a climate-related event, a hurricane, a flood, we probably want to message something different or stop messaging entirely to certain zip codes or certain locales. You've all seen these examples shared on Twitter where brands are sending marketing messages into the state of Florida, into Houston after the weather events that they've had. Why are we doing that? You can automate that all on the back end that you're starting to see with a variety of platforms. It also means that you can customize the content inside of the campaign. This is an example from Jack Threads. This was an email that went out on November 12th. Within their snow markets, they saw best in snow and jackets. Within the markets that didn't have a degree temperature of above 45, they messaged between 45 and 55, they messaged long sleeve shirts, and anything below 45, they messaged jackets. Anything that was above 65, they messaged t-shirts. So being able to customize that content based on what's actually happening in the geographic location from a weather perspective is something you're starting to see. User behavior, I'm going to go to value. Value is a great one that I think is underutilized right now from a B2B perspective, or really anything. How much value do you bring to that user? This is an example from X.AI. X.AI is $42 per user per month. So for a big organization, that's a pretty heavy lift. But one thing they do really, really well, and they automate and personalize an email every single week around each individual customer. And it tells you exactly how much money, or in this case, time, they saved you as a part of utilizing their platform. So every week you get a personalized email that says, "Good morning, Michael. Here's a quick summary of the work I did for you last week, and I can happily say that there are no outstanding tasks. Here's the value statement. I scheduled 2 meetings for you last week, saving you over 30 minutes of email ping pong, and here are the meetings that were scheduled utilizing that platform." So they're utilizing value-based statements, segmenting that by users that are using the platform, and then personalizing that based on the data that they have on that user. What's your first name? How many meetings did you schedule? How much time did that save you? In your head, that translates to money, and then showing you exactly what they did for you every single week. This is another good example of that, but this is an example where you need to have a filter that stops those automation flows like value. Because for any one of these personalization opportunities, if something doesn't equate, if something doesn't look good, we should not send the campaign, okay? So this is from Drift, love the team at Drift. But one thing that they do is if you have a whole boatload of sort of bagels, sort of zeros on the board, you had 0 conversations on your website, you had 0 leads from your website, they still send you the value email every single week. Right, this is an opportunity to not send that email. When the platform didn't do anything for you, probably should message them with something else. Here's how you can use the platform better. Hey, have you installed this particular opportunity? Have you created this particular playbook within your chat app? So understanding when is the right and wrong time to change your automation flows is also crucial in this personalization and segmentation opportunity too. I'm going to skip this example and this one and show you some examples from a customer data perspective. So showing people how they're utilizing the platform that you're on is also particularly impactful. It speaks to value statements. It allows for personalization as well. This is from the folks at Grammarly. So if you're not familiar, Grammarly is an app you can install into your browser or use within your browser that'll essentially correct your grammar within Outlook, within Gmail, within anything you're using, Word. Really, really great platform. Every single week you get a report of all the things you did on the platform. So this again is a value statement. Why am I using this every single week? Look at the value it brings to me. Look at the words that are continuing to get that I miss, or the grammar things that I continue to miss. And then there are cross-selling opportunities for how you can use Grammarly in other places. Peloton is another good example of this, right? So the bougie little bike or running platform that you can buy and be a member of. Every single month they send you, hey, here are all the days that you worked out. Here's your most popular instructor. Here's how much you burnt in terms of calories. And then they're cross-selling other opportunities as well. Product adoption is another thing we can do from a segmentation opportunity. How do we get users to actively use our product through the inbox? Proactive does this very, very well because they understand one key insight about their business. Proactive knows that if you utilize their skin things, their products, for 6 weeks, you're 100 times more likely to be utilizing it in 6 months. It's a crazy stat that they have on usage behavior with their products. So what they do is for the first 7.5 weeks, I don't know why it's 7.5, but they do 7.5 weeks. Every single week you are getting, and within the last week, I think it's just sort of a congratulations for using the proactive solutions for those first 7 weeks, is they tell you here's what to expect with your skin. On week 2, expect X, Y, and Z. On week 3, expect X, Y, and Z. So they're segmenting based on what's the time that you've been using the product. They're personalizing based on the user's name and when they received that product as well. Cold leads in another area that we could spend some time in. Why? Because we often spend a lot of our personalization and segmentation thoughts on making sure we are maximizing hot, or if you will, warm leads, or people that have raised their hands like, I'm very interested in your business. That's only half the battle we can do. Anybody that's not really raising our hands and not interested in organizations is another automation flow and personalization opportunity that we have at our disposal too. One example of a company that did this really well was Sunrise Senior Living. Now, Sunrise Senior Living is an assisted living center, or a family of them across the country. And they did not want to use their automation platform to nurture warm conversations with people who have said we're very interested in moving in, or parents of or children of people that they were moving into their centers. But they said, hey, why don't we leverage our Marketo instance to nurture those people that may have dropped off the radar? And so they did, and over the course of a 46-day flow, they delivered them, I think, 13 pieces of content. What they found is that comparatively to the year before, where they were not messaging that cold leads group or segment, those people converted 246 times more likely to convert into actual people who were staying in their centers than the year previous. Just because they had messaged them, all things held completely the same, they had messaged them this flow, 246% more likely. Now, it may have been just like, 260 more people comparatively to 0 the year before, but it was 260% more cold leads converting into actual customers than those that they had the year previous. Transactional. For the e-commerce people in the room, take a look at your transactional campaigns, because they are very often the most read campaigns that you send. Consumers say that they're 8 times more likely to read a transactional campaign than they are your promotional campaign. They want to know what they've ordered, when they'd ordered it, when they're going to get it, if they returned it, when they're going to get their money back. So they pay attention to these emails. One brand that I think does this really, really well is Bonobos. Bonobos, if you're not familiar, men's only fashion retailer, got gobbled up by Walmart to the tune of $400 million. One of the reasons why Walmart bought them is because they literally in the prospectus put this was the best startup in the retail space that we had seen leverage digital tactics, period, at end of story. And Walmart had looked at all of them. But it was just these tiny little tactics that made their marketing efforts even more impactful, one of them being within their transactional campaigns. Every single time you get your transactional campaigns, it's basically the same messaging, right? Logo, brand, what did you buy, here's your receipt, right? Bonobos did something a little bit extra. They included an Easter egg. So this particular Easter egg that they included for literally years on end, but they were testing it, I found out later, and I'll tell you the results of that test and why this matters in a second. But the call to action on this was, hey, here's your order. While you wait, enjoy a cat who loves boxes. And you're like, huh. So you hop over to this link. It's on YouTube, and it's Maru the cat, okay? If you're not familiar with Maru the cat is a cat that loves to jump in boxes. The owner literally puts the box out, and the cat jumps into the box, okay? This cat has 980 million views on YouTube, okay? Literally, the owner put out a box one day, and cat started jumping into it, okay? I'm gonna let you enjoy this and enjoy your lunch at the same time. Also, PS, for the cat people in the room, I have included you now, okay? Did the dogs, check, cat people, good, all right? Breaking news, he gets in the box. So proud of himself. All right, so he makes it into the box. Now, I know you're all wondering, why are you showing me a cat video jumping into boxes around transactional campaigns? But let me tell you this, okay? The Bonobos team, when they A/B tested this, they would do 6 months of Easter eggs in their transactional campaigns, and then they would do 6 months of nothing from an Easter egg perspective. It would just be plain transactional messaging. They saw a common trend during the 6 months when they were having Easter eggs in their transactional campaigns. Their promotional messages saw an increased rise in open rates. And they literally plotted 6 months with Easter eggs, 6 months without. And then they put the promotional messages over that. And although, yes, there's probably 100 variables that could be causing the reasons why open rates went up on their promotional campaigns, they always saw a little bump of 1 to 3% during the 6 months where there were Easter eggs in their transactional campaigns. And then they would drop by 1 to 3% for the 6 months afterwards. And then they'd go back up. They literally layered on the data, and that's what they saw. So their takeaway was this: because transactional emails are more read often than our promotional campaigns, when we include something that's interesting, different than what other people are doing, people will go and open our promotional campaigns because we may have something different in those too. So take that for what it's worth, because if it's not Maru the cat, it could be a $2,500 mini horse that you can buy from North Carolina. These are things that they experimented with. Okay, always say hello. I'm gonna fly through this because this really speaks for itself, okay? You need a welcome series, okay? And for anyone that maybe this is just like table stakes at this point, literally 60-ish% of companies are doing a welcome series, but there's a lot of you that aren't. 43-ish% of companies are not doing this. The stats speak for themselves. 4 times higher open rate, 5 times higher click-through rate, and the big one is this, is a 33% increase in long-term customer engagement in email by simply doing a welcome series, okay? Again, 43% of companies aren't doing it. The timing that you should do this is right away. When someone subscribes, within a minute, you need to deliver the first messaging of whatever welcome series you're creating. They have a 10 times higher open engagement rate than those that you batch outside of 60 seconds. There are literally tons of examples in here of welcome series, from saying hello to help people get started that you can look at. Show me how to do business with you is another welcome tactic that you can use. Offers can be good, but be careful. Make sure you're leveraging offers that have the least amount of impact on marginal revenue and the highest conversion opportunity. Again, least amount of money for marketing to have to invest, but the highest conversion opportunity that you get. Maybe it's buy one, get one, maybe it's 10%, maybe it's $5, you gotta figure that out. This is a great example of a welcome series. This is Airtable. They do 4 campaigns over 7 days. The first of which is just welcoming you to the platform, showing you a bit about the platform with different features. Then they do a social proof email. So the second one is based on what type of business you are. So they show you other case studies of businesses like yours that have leveraged their platform. Also, just notice the goodness here. Appropriately sized buttons, appropriately sized fonts. There are emojis in the subject line. This is just beautifully well done and cohesive across all of their welcome series. The next two, the third and the fourth email in that welcome series, show you specific features that they think are going to be interesting for your organization. So 4-part welcome series across about 9 days. Your welcome series has to be tailored to your type of organization or sort of buying cycle, if you will. There are any number of great examples on reallyGreatEmails.com as well. Also, all the ESPs have great guides on welcome series, why they're important, what sort of what types of emails you utilize for them, the content of them, so take a look at those. From a personalization and automation perspective, here are some great tools that you can take advantage of. There are a number that are out there. Marketo's out there, Emo's out there, MailChimp's out there. You all know who they are. Here are some B-list players that you may want to pay attention to. SmartFocus, Vero, and Autopilot, and Selligent. These 4 right here are all challenger brands that have come on the marketplace in the last 5 to 6 years. Coincidentally, Selligent is all the ExactTarget, the former executive team at ExactTarget. Selligent was a brand that was based in the EU. They now have a big presence here in the US, and it's all the ET team that took ET to Salesforce over the last few years that are all out of their non-competes and can now go work for another platform. I showed you Movable Ink. Storyports and Janrain are places that you can utilize, or tools you can utilize to take all of your data, clean it up, and create cohesive personas and segments from those. The last one is Outreach.io. It's this guy right here. If you're doing anything from an ABM perspective, or you have a sales team that you need to be able to wrangle and have some control of the outbound email communications that you're doing, or they're doing, I should say, take a look at Outreach.io. It's a bolt-on to your email service provider. It allows you as the marketer to control content, timing, cadence, brand standards. Salespeople can control when they want to send it to specific prospects, but it's based on the salesperson that's driving the highest conversion and engagement opportunities through the channel. So it automates that whole process between both teams. Okay, be human. Let's get real. This is email after all. Here are some tactics to make this channel a little bit more human. First, speak like a human being, okay? Gone are the days of sales and marketing gobbledygook that needs to happen in your campaigns. It's another human being at the other end of your subscriber relationship. Talk like them. If it means it's elevated and academic, then great. If it's dumb and funny, fine. But talk like the person that you're marketing to on the end of that conversation, and talk in the way that they speak in doing business or making a buying decision. There are a couple good examples in here for you to take a look at. I won't take you through them all, but there's great examples in here for speaking like a human being of different brands on both the B2B and B2C side. Ask and you shall receive. On your opt-in forms, please ask people what they want to receive from you. This is a great example from the Walker Museum. They have 7 different things that you can opt in to receive content around. Rather than just simply asking for email address, ask people, hey, what do you want to receive from us? You will inevitably lead to higher engagement rates, especially on the conversion opportunity and the ability to drive an open, because you can speak to those needs or those specific topics that people have said, I would like to receive content from. If there's a brand that holds this sort of idea true, it is the New York Times. As I mentioned before, 73 different newsletters that you can opt into, or different components of newsletters that you can opt into. People always tell me, well, that's too many choices. New York Times has 12.7 million subscribers, an 84% annual open rate, and a 63% annual click-through rate. So, method in the madness, apparently. Tell you when I want it. Rather than you determining or actually guessing what the frequency preferences are for your user, allow them to tell you. This is the Subscription Preferences Center from Bonobos. Note the one that I showed you in the beginning of this conversation, never email me again. You never hear that from this Bonobos one. Well, first of all, it looks like Bonobos, right? You know you're on the Bonobos subscription page. But look at the language here. How much Bonobos do you want in your life is the question. Not do you want to unsubscribe, how much do you want in your life? And then they include options like, how about once a week, let's take it slow. Or a few times a month sounds about right. Once a month, I like you, Bonobos, like. It's not you, it's me, Bonobos, I need a 30-day break. AKA, I bought too much in the last month. And the last one, unsubscribe, sniff, it's over Bonobos, right? So just look at how they're behaving around the Subscription Preferences Center. Customize it to your brand. Leverage your brand voice and your language so it feels like you. And do not put never email me again as an option. I'm going to skip that one. Re-engagement campaigns. If somebody stops doing something, if a subscriber stops opening and clicking, you've lost their attention. You have to work on getting it back. Google thinks that, Gmail thinks that that's about a 30-day window. They want to see at least one engagement every 30 days, but you've got to determine what that engagement window looks like for your brand. And make sure that if you've got an unengaged subscriber, leveraging a completely different personalization opportunity for them is tantamount to getting their attention again. A couple of examples of this. Nespresso. Nespresso knows exactly when you've run out of capsules based on how often you've bought it in the past. So their re-engagement campaign starts with, we miss you, enjoy free shipping, right? So they offer up the opportunity. Another one from Timbuk2. Note the subject line here and how they're leveraging diversity in this particular subject line. Timbuk2, very much geared towards a specific audience. Don't ghost us. okay? This is their re-engagement flow. Another great example from Grammarly. You've just unlocked the Wrinkle in Time badge. Hey there, you previously installed Grammarly on your browser back when you were really into writing things on the internet, then you disappeared. You can come back and continue writing awesome things. You push go, and it'll reinstall it, and they'll make sure that you're in their series of emails from an ongoing perspective. There is a baked-in 90-day re-engagement flow in here. If you're looking for how do I structure a re-engagement campaign, we typically recommend a minimum of 3 emails across about a 30 to 90-day window to understand if someone is actually going to get re-engaged. If they don't, stop messaging them the same things. Put them into a list that you don't actively market all of your information to within the inbox for the foreseeable future. If I want out, please make it easy, okay? There is a reason why all of the ISPs have buried and added these huge, they've added these huge buttons at the top of the inbox to instantly unsubscribe and mark as spam. It's because we all buried our unsubscribe links. At the very minimum, at least provide some contrast for your subscription preferences center and make that unsubscribe link a little bit more noticeable than 6-point font at the bottom of your footer. Here's a good example from Starbucks. And if someone does opt out, what's stopping you from giving them reasons to stay? I haven't seen a good recent example of this, and I would love for someone to show me different, but this is the best one I've seen in literally 15 years from the folks at Groupon. Now, back in the day, for you, those people that are, what would be the cutoff here? So let's say you've worked in some sort of professional office environment in the last 15 to 16 years. If you don't qualify for that, and you're recently new, you probably don't understand this, but 15 or 16 years ago, we all would crowd around our inbox at 9 a.m. and find out where we were getting a $2 sub. This was pre-push notification. There was a world where that did exist. And Groupon figured out that every single email subscriber was potentially worth, their per subscriber potential revenue per month was $43. So the value of a subscriber was $43 per month. When they generated a subscription, that was potentially $43 per month per user on their bottom line, a very, very valuable potential ROI. So when you unsubscribed, they wanted to see if they could win you back. And the way that they did this is when you unsubscribed, you would receive this particular messaging once you hit the unsubscribe button. It would say, you are unsubscribed, we're sorry to see you go. How sorry? Well, meet Derek. He's the guy that sends you your daily Groupon. So you see Derek's coworker come over, they have a little tiff. Derek's coworker throws what you assume is scalding hot water, throws the cup at him, exits stage right, and then this messaging comes up that's just delightful. And it says, that was pretty mean. I hope you're happy. Want to make it up to Derek. Resubscribe. For the 18 months trailing that this was on their landing page, 40% or more of people resubscribed. $43 per month per user. There you go. Probably worth it. I'll just leave this one here. If you want to be human, stop buying baloney lists. There are good lists out there, I'm not saying that, but do not buy lists from unreputable places. And be very careful about putting any purchase list that you buy into any platform that you hope to be on for years and years and years and build a solid reputation. Because most of them will kick you off if they find out you're utilizing purchase lists. Okay, now, just like you're acting like a human, I also would like you to act like a scientist. And this is where we get into the conversation about A/B testing and analytics. So a couple things to note around A/B testing and analytics in email. First things first, always start with a hypothesis. Always say this is what we think is going to happen. A test without a hypothesis is just giving you no path to either success or failure. So please make some educated guesses of what you're trying to potentially impact. Understand that anything that you test, all those small ones like a different button or a different title, is just impacting what's called a local maximum result. If you want to potentially have huge, holistic, global maximum changes with A/B tests, you need to change everything from top to bottom. In other words, you're changing and comparing subject line in a full image-based email versus a text-based campaign. There needs to be huge differences between the two tests in order to understand if you're having a global maximum impact or a local maximum impact. Test automated and operational emails. We typically, literally 74% of companies that we've encountered do not test their operational or transactional campaigns. They just set them up and they forget them. but most of the email they're sending is operational or automated. You've got to make sure you're testing those campaigns as well. Focus on tests that move your needle. If you care about eyeballs, you should be focused on things that impact from name and subject line. If you care about conversion rate, focus on things like the content of your campaigns, okay? So focus on things that matter for you making a business case inside your organization for what you do. If it's eyeballs, it's different than actual conversions. Limit tests to one thing at a time. One. None of this multivariate Tamaguchi testing, whatever the variable is. One thing, one test, okay? Maybe it's a different subject line. Maybe it's a different button. Maybe it's a product image versus a lifestyle image. But test one thing at a time. If you do multivariate testing, you're going to conflate results. Just FYI. Test audience segments that are similar and different, okay? A lot of us, when we test campaigns, we simply take a 10% slice off, or a 5 or 10% slice, and we say, that's statistically relevant, okay? It's great and all well and good if everybody is just a homogenized person inside your subscription list, but they're not. You have different types of people. So slice and do segmentation and then test. Do not just take a 5 to 10% slice of your database and just test against those individuals. You could have active subscribers in there. You could have inactives. You could have VIPs in there. You could have people that are about to churn. The impact of that mix is very, very impactful. Test audience segments that are active subscribers. I mentioned this to somebody who asked a question of me earlier. This is your most important segment. The people who interact with your campaigns every 30, 60, or 90 days, they're the people that you need to make sure you're slicing out and testing anything that you want to do that's impactful for your campaigns, because they will tell you if what you're doing is actually working or not. So these are people that are engaged in a certain amount of time that you consider an active subscriber, and you're testing those particular individuals. There is a series of different opportunities that you can test from your automated or operational emails as well. Maybe it's things about different trigger logic. Maybe it's how quickly you sent the message versus how not quickly you sent the message. Whether to send a series of automated emails or whether to not actually send them. The delay between automated emails, is it a minute? Is it 5 minutes? Is it 5 days? Under what conditions are your automated emails skipped? In other words, if somebody does something, we should stop sending them that campaign. Nothing more annoying than when you set up a series of automated emails for a sale, and then I buy something in that sale, and then you send me that sale messaging again, right? I've already bought something. Stop sending me the email campaigns. And under what conditions does an automated email series ends or is skipped? Ensure that your testing groups are statistically significant. You need an N of at least 5% at a minimum. Anything lower than that is not statistically relevant inside of that segment that you've sliced. You might have too few, and try to stay away from random segments of different types of subscribers because you will conflate results. Share your results everywhere. What you do in email can impact display, it can impact content, maybe it's a different button color that can be more impactful, so share your results across other parts of the organization. Here is a framework for testing. Here's our hypothesis, here's what we're testing, here's who we're going to share this with. 3 things you always need with every A/B test. Okay, last item on metrics around this idea of being a scientist. Beyond just deliverability, open rate, click-through rate, click-to-open rate, there is this entire matrix of about 70 additional metrics that I would encourage you to take a look at. Given we're about 30 seconds from wrapping this up, I'm not going to tell you what they all are. But Litmus has designed this email matrix that's both direct business impact, indirect business impact, subscriber relationships, and your inbox provider relationship, and then plotted it on both short-term and long-term impact with any one of those key metrics. Each one of these is broken down for you. So here's direct business impact. You've got indirect in here as well. Subscriber relationships, inbox provider relationships, both short and long-term. And that will give you a much broader sense of the impact of your campaigns. But on that note, let's recap. How do we make email programs better for 2020? First, list growth, acquire everywhere. Find people wherever you can in the touch points of your customer journey to drive revenue, to drive subscriber growth. It's not just about the inbox relationship, it's also about the relationship for you to be able to impact that customer well outside the inbox. Authentication, prove who you are, right? It's all for naught. All of these tactics are for naught if you don't actually get to the inbox. So make sure you're giving yourself the best possible chance to make it into the inbox. Design. This is this idea of being ubiquitous. Make sure that you are as impactful as possible from name, from subject line, from how you're visually designing for those people that you're interacting with. It's going to be different depending upon what type of business or vertical or subscriber relationship you're developing. On that note, subject lines, get better or simply be boring, sophistication, sentiment, emojis, and diversity, right? It's those 4 key things, or a combination of them in some capacity, as well as some nuanced words that you can get better at making sure you have the highest open rate that you possibly can. Get interactive, right? Let's get jazzy. We have all of these beautiful devices that people are leveraging, and we have the opportunity these days to make sure that our emails are as impactful as possible inside the inbox, right? Your Gen Zers, your millennials are all aging into their late 30s, early 40s at this point. These are people that have grown up in a GIF and emoji generation. We have to be able to serve those constituents as they begin to age as well. Personalization, it's all about timely, targeted, and relevant. It's hard, but it's worth putting the dollars and the time into to make sure we're getting the maximum return on investment from our campaigns. Always say hello because it is polite. It's what your mom taught you to do. And it's just friendly, and it elicits the best open click-through rate and impact on long-term customer engagement that you're gonna have in the email channel. Be human, but act like a scientist. Talk like a human being, and on the back end, get really nerdy about data and your analytics. Act scientific, right? Make sure you're taking a holistic approach to how you're testing, the structure that you test, what you test, and when you test. And the last thing is get really, really holistic about how you report the value of this channel. It's not just about deliverability, open rate, click-through rate. It's not just about getting to averages. It's about making sure we understand the full impact of this channel that we can have at our disposal. So that is how we get better. First things first, thank you so much for spending 4 hours with me. Second item, I hope you enjoy your 2 days here. And if you are here tomorrow, I am doing this wonderful presentation about my crazy British mother, 11 a.m., stage 1. I would love to have you there. It's hilarious. You get to meet my mom. There's videos, there's a little bit of music. It's a good time. It's one of my favorite presentations. Last thing, thank you again. I hope you enjoy the next 2 days. Take care.